Hi. Thank you for listening to me talk to myself for 5 minutes. I'm actually really glad that this happened this way because usually people open up they open up the hangout and they start, and they just jump right in. But I just realized, I'm not even gonna tell you. I just realized because I don't even need to tell you. So hi, hello, how's it going? Um, I was not talking to myself for you know 10 minutes. It wasn't 10 minutes. If anybody was, I saw there was a two waiting, so you saw me come on. So that moment we were just kind of like this dead silence. I was setting things up, but it's funny enough. I always look back at the end of a stream, like and I go, that first 2 or 3 minutes of the setup that you kind of end up falling into every time. If you could just cut that, it takes me like a minute or two to kind of find my footing. So you're listening. I turned the screen share off because I actually wanted to make sure for a second the Facebook comment, I thought it was gone. And I was like, well, we don't have anything to talk about. Anyway, so let me go back to sharing. And since I kind of found my footing into terms of what I wanted to say, and I found a better way to say it, let me, well, do I really need to? Yeah, I guess I should have it on. All right. We are sharing because it's caring. Damn it. Uh, so this is a blog. As I mentioned, the title, the four mothers of this kind of Black women empowerment, which is the acronym, I guess, for BWE. Now, I think it's just been the one that stuck the most. There's been kind of discussion about, well, should it be Black women sovereignty? Should it be something else? Because sovereignty is an empowerment. There's a lot of discussion. I think BWE has just been kind of the term that stuck the most over the past decade in these discussions. So it's just kind of this general grouping of Black women-centered thought. Maybe kind of an outgrowth of maybe Alice Walkerian type of what used to be called womanism that's kind of just moved into a lot of circles. So number one, as I was talking to myself for like 3 minutes, and I didn't realize that I still had the hangout on mute. It's weird because I'm used to being on my phone joining someone else's chat and just kind of like waiting for my turn to like start talking and jump into the mix. Uh, that that type of that's kind of translated over to me being back on my laptop again because for so long I've just been on hangouts with other people and joining in. Steering the ship myself has been a little bit different. So anyway, so Halima Anderson, this is her blog, and this started in what 2000, 2009. I think the first post here is 7. I went all the way back to the beginning, and I'm actually kind of trying to let myself be a little bit surprised. So I just kind of searched from the very first post, well, just to give you an idea of how old this blog is, which you should check out. I think so. The big part, the key thing I want to do is just draw these distinctions between Halima Anderson's blog here, the Sojourner's Passport, and I believe Evia's blog too is still in existence as well. And we'll get to that here. She actually has a YouTube channel as well. Maybe I'll pull one of her videos in the next one. Okay, so this is even so the first post here, or the earliest post, is from October 23rd of 2007. So we've already gone a decade, back in the past. And so for a lot of the newer women, now again, I only really came to the older blogs like this, the original kind of BWE blogs, years later, probably through Beyond Crystal Karazin's Beyond Black and White and the associated scenes around there. So this wasn't like these weren't things that I was reading a decade ago myself, and I found my way backwards as well. And as I read through most of the blog of this and Sojourner's Passport and some of Evia's works, is the funny thing I found. This is maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. How the songs changes, but it still stays the same. And the key thing I wanted to do with this kind of back and forth for a couple of videos. I don't. This won't be like a continual like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 series that I'm going to do or anything. I think this will be just something I kind of alternate. After I'm done with this, I was going to do this tonight. I'm kind of worried because I really want to jump in on this whole Meghan Markle Archie thing sooner than later. But this weekend, tomorrow through the rest of the through Monday gets a little bit weird. I don't know how things are going to sit. So maybe I can break it up into two parts. Uh, so I really, really, really want to talk about the one drop rule, and I really want to talk about this Megan Archie thing. I've been on Twitter the past few days and just kind of, jumping in the mix in a couple of different circles. Anyway, so please look forward to that because I don't know if it'll be tomorrow. I don't know if it'll be later on to the week or to the weekend. We'll see how it all kind of shakes out, but that is definitely coming. I feel like I want to give myself another day to kind of pull some tweets and some things I want to look at and kind of discuss. But I really want to hit it while it's all still new and fresh in everyone's heads. And then maybe Monday or Tuesday come back with a follow up because there's always something I think about later. Even the last video that I just did before the baby was, I think it's right before the baby was born, just right on the edge of the baby being born, that I already have like 2 or 3 things I feel like I could say or rebut. But anyway, back to the subject at hand. What I want to do is avoid my usual, but I guess that maybe that just makes me me. I feel like I'm just kind of all over the place. But I just want to hit a piece here, a kind of a flash from the past, if you will, and see how that connects to the here and the now, and then move over to this Facebook post from Breanna Nouveaux that I actually commented on. I'm trying to comment more, like it's weird because Facebook, I really just only am on there for a few Black women groups, and then there's a few very small handful of people I follow or look at. I feel like I think I spend more time on Twitter, more honestly than anything. But I have 2 feet in 2 different pools of people, and it's not really even distribution. It's like 70% these kind of dissident, alt right, post right, whatever type of circles, and then maybe 30% of the time there's like maybe like 5 to 10, kind of more Black women, BWE specific people that I follow and then that I like or retweet and I engage with. So Facebook, I think I really only just signed up just to kind of engage more of the Black woman BWE side of things. And there's a few dissident alt-righty people that I kind of follow and talk to, or I don't really talk to. I don't really talk to anyone. So I really only have just started getting involved, even though I've lurked, liked, and shared a lot of posts for probably the past good year or so. But anyway, so this is Halima Anderson's blog. And if anyone takes a look and there's anything you see that you want to talk about or want to come on and talk about or want me to cover, by all means, please take a look. She kind of been in my mind to start with because there was a post. I'm not going to go find now because the way this looks on the phone versus on the desktop is different. And I know it's in the email because I covered a piece that she did called Who's Zooming Who, and she made a point of discussing a lot of these kind of like post-colonial African countries where the leaders have, married white women, what that kind of means, etc. And because this is actually over on Jonathan Poll's Pole Position channel, where one of the key subjects he discusses is different racial and ethnic groups in diaspora. And there was a discussion that we were having, and I thought since he'd spent a fair amount of time himself in Africa, that it would be an interesting kind of a way to kind of like bring two different like schools and lunch tables of discourse that I tend to find myself in together. So Halima Anderson had been kind of in my mind, and I thought this would be a perfect place to start because I spent maybe like a year ago, maybe not that long ago, I went through like this entire blog just like reading pieces, mostly on my phone, so it's kind of hard to like situate. Again, the desktop doesn't look the same way. But so this is her about me about the blog, which actually, when I realized that I was the chat was on mute, so I was reading it, and all of a sudden it hit me like I don't think that anybody can hear me. Is anybody out there? No, they're not out there because they can't hear you, you dumbass. But anyway, so the first one point that because of the title of the blog and just her about me. Hi, I'm Halima Anderson. I'm an author with a passion for the relationship well-being of Black women, hence writing the book, Supposing I Want to Date a White Guy. It's important for me to specify that this blog is for women who are new to interracial dating or who still have struggles with the idea and want to see if it is a thing for them. This category of Black women will be my primary focus. If you're already in an IR or open to the idea, I wish you good luck. So that's the first thing, even just a second ago when I was just leading into the blog, into the piece, was just thinking, originally, and this, I don't know, I can't say it's intentional or how this shakes out, but I will say that this is something I've kind of noticed in just a couple different ways. I don't want to say a lot, because that's not even a solid number. A lot of the coupling of the discussions that we're having today seem to be an outgrowth of first a certain type of Black woman and certain types of conversations even a decade ago. And obviously this goes back further, but a decade ago when blogs like this were starting and Black women were having these conversations, it seems a lot of it originated along or around the interracial discussion, around the interracial dating discussion. And I don't have an answer for this, and I'm just going to kind of say this without really having any kind of conclusive way to discuss this. I kind of see it as there's the Black women who may be keyed into the discussions that we're having across the spectrum about race, about who was at the gate and all this. It seems like the interracial or Black women who are open, who are not so Blackistan identified, so tied into just this kind of Black centered, Black racial centered, Black community centered discussions are the women who where we kind of are in these circles today. And with a lot of the earlier blogs, it feels like the interracial dating aspect is the thing that kind of became the one of the not one of, but not completely one of the. It just seems to have become one of the discussions that primarily kind of kick things off. Because I'm just making a general observation here to myself, and I know this is supremely anecdotal and just something I'm just saying, just suggesting, is that Black women who tend to already date out or just even more generally live outside of like the Black community and just this Black kind of racial centeredness, they are the ones who where these discussions kind of maybe, I don't want to say originated, that doesn't feel like the word, but I think that's the only way I can describe it. So if someone were to say, well, it just seems like all these Black women talking about, class or economics and this and that, they're all just these, ghetto gagger swirlers who want to jump on pink dick. No, but there is something to be said about why, where, and how a lot of these discussions kind of started, and why some of the centeredness maybe came from interracial dating, and then dot dot dot. We're here a decade or so later where these things happen. So I'll just leave that there because that's something I find interesting, and I think there's something to be said. But I guess maybe the most immediate thing is Black women who aren't so centered in the Black race and the Black community, in i.e. our interracial dating, which is just one of many other ways. Maybe you're into like kayaking or and I personally hate like doing those things and making that kind of like those statements. But there's something to be said that has a lot of nuance and needs to be unpacked. But there's something there about why and where that this is where a lot of these conversations started. Anyway, I'm going to just leave that behind and not try to extrapolate too much there, because I think I actually might pick that up in the Facebook conversation. So what I just wanted to do is just basically find an older piece, something just from the past, kind of walk through it and just lightly comment on it. And I think just to keep myself like because I don't want this to be like supremely long or anything. Uh, we'll just kind of read through and just kind of chit chat and just see what's here to be said. So before I go any further, because last time I think I went for like forever before I looked at the chat. Because I don't know, I mean, I think there's some streamers who seem to have a lot of really good balance, but I just kind of like, I get the people who say I don't look at it at all, and I just go look at it at the end, but I don't need to do that. Oh, yep, no sound. Is there sound now? Yep. I'll ask that now because there surely was no sound before. But let's just check. But you should be grateful or happy because I was able to kind of meter out some of the, it's almost like when you get to someone's house and you start taking your shoes off and, you get comfortable, you take your shoes off at the door and you just kind of chill. And then you kind of get into the meat and potatoes of things. So I'll leave that there. I'm assuming there's sound now because I unturned off the damn mute button, and the little green dots are making a little bounciness like there's sound. So I am trusting that there is sound. Yay, thanks, Cheese Pizza. Thank you. And hey, Jay and Delcroix, that happens all the time. And that's the great thing about this whole thing is that there's so many people who stream and do things, and usually the next day I'll just go catch it in the morning, or I'll catch it like when I'm driving or something. So uh you enjoy your rest. I'll be doing that eventually myself. So, all right, so this is this blog post from January 1st of 2009. Wow, so we're just a little over a decade ago that this was written. So, do Black women actually know what it takes to build the strong Black community they keep talking about? Or is it all just dreamscape fantasy? I remember coming across a book that said that immigrants often have fantasies of returning home. It keeps them sane and helps them face life in new lands. And many eventually never return, and not surprisingly, because these dreams are never really actioned in any way. Indeed, concrete steps and plans are never made to make these fantasies reality. I believe that the strong community slash Black unity idea may occupy this position in many Black women's minds, something to think about fondly and escape to, but never really actioned. What makes it a dangerous notion for Black women pinning? What makes a dangerous notion for Black women pinning real life hopes to it? So let's pause there. That's a nice little comparative point. I read through this kind of quickly, and I just wanted to be a little bit fresh in my brain and just kind of be reacting to her thoughts in real time. So that's a good setup, and just that kind of initial premise here. That's something I definitely have observed, and that really kind of hasn't changed either. Just one, I guess, just so my one little point here, just initially, will be it's almost like the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And I saw someone else suggest this a little bit better than I did, where the way you had like kind of whites, younger whites within the past, this is maybe something I think kind of stopped by like the 90s, early 2000s, younger whites kind of throwing on bell. This is actually, yeah, this was right around the time when the bell bottoms came back, and certain like looks and styles where, you know, even though only maybe a handful, population wise of whites and their parents or grandparents were actually at Woodstock, maybe even less than that, it became this kind of like look back towards the past, like, oh man, I'm just like my parents were in the 60s, rolling around in the mud, listening to Hendrix, Star Spangled Banner, da da da. And I'd argue that the Black Lives Matter movement kind of was a similar type of performative throwback to, look at us, we're marching around almost like Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks on the bus, and we're in our suits, and there's, instead of the water hoses and police dogs, it's like the more swatified American police, and we're marching and we're wearing our afros. Well, today, or more recently in the Black Lives Matter, we got dreads and twists and locks, and we're really marching with it, man. It's this kind of escapism back to this kind of imagined past. And whereas, Woodstock, and it was more like, predominantly whites kind of reliving this kind of musical countercultural era for Black people, particularly around that time. And if you're someone later on in the 90s, 2000, in the 2000s and beyond, kind of looking backwards, that's such a seminal piece of your racial or ethnic history, especially for Black Americans. It's every February, Black History Month. It's every, Ken Burns PBS documentary where you're like, oh man, look at us. We're like, looking back at our, our history. Everybody's like, everybody's grandmother, grandfather was marching with Martin Luther King. It's funny. I remember being a kid or younger and hearing about Woodstock. And I just thought, and it's because it was just so very simple for me. Like, oh, that was in the 60s. My mother was alive in the 60s. So like, she must know about this. It must have been there. I remember like, hey mom, what was, and then, I mean, my mother's like some like person born in the early 50s in like the South. Like, it's like, mom, how was Woodstock? And she just kind of looks at me like, oh, I don't know. I wasn't there. Like, what are you talking about? It's so like, this kind of nostalgia looking backwards. But anyway, so that kind of immigrant anecdote that she gives there is really cool. All right. So next paragraph. When you want to build anything, say a garden, a shed even, you first find out what it will take in terms of materials, labor, and time. Next, you take stock of what you have for the project. This is how you know how serious an idea is. Now, have you ever heard any of the Black community slash Black unity activist agitators lay things out in these terms, i.e., what do we need, what do we have, what steps do we take to get the rest of the needed things? There isn't even a movement towards Black nation building, yet we can mobilize for the Gen of Six. Only people doing their pockets of activities here and there, crossing their fingers that it will feed into some general effort of Black unity, and nothing to measure whether it is indeed effective and not canceling out somewhere down the line. Nothing showing it as a practical idea. So with that paragraph, the first thing I thought of was what I see sometimes in dissident right, alt right, is just like, well, I just came across it yesterday. Let me take a sip. I came across this like a few days ago. Oh, well, I have no problem like, talking with Black separatists and, doing something, parallel to or in tandem with them. And I've run into this for years in those circles. And I think maybe, let's just say 50, the first half of it was just me always kind of nodding like, yeah, but then as I get more into these Black issues, these realizations, I'm usually, when I get into a situation with some, white identitarian, white ethno-stater, white separatist, white nationalist, dissident right, or whatever, and I stop to ask them just very much what you just said in this paragraph. Where are Black people like lining in these separatist communities, or which don't exist, or is usually just some kind of pro-Black, something along the lines of Hebrew Israelite type. We're Black and we want our own stuff. Where are they like? This is even a fall of the white ethno stereotypes. They're never telling you, well, which part. Well, they have a little bit more to run on. They're telling you they either want like the kind of Harold Covington Pacific Northwest area, or some people want parts of the general Midwest. They want some parts of the coast, et cetera, and so forth. So, like, even as much of the criticism about the alt right and dissident right and the white ethno stereotypes, there's a good segment of them, at least 50%, have a good rough estimate of where they at least want to begin. Where are any Black separatists or Black unity folks even saying this? And what parts of the land do they want? And more importantly, how are they going to fund it? How are they going to get there? Because I've thrown this back a few times, particularly when like, oh, Farrakhan, he's going to lead his people somewhere, and the Blacks just need to know about the Jews, and they'll figure it out. And it's like, where do you think Black people in any collective sense are going to get this money from? I mean, I've seen enough whites say, hey, we'll pay for them to go. We'll pay you to play Roots in reverse. But without going too far down that hole, this is literally like a decade ago, just kind of what Halima here is acknowledging. So when you hear the Black community, Black unity talk and what have you, there's no money, there's no ideas, there's no plans. It's usually just a few Black people, mostly Black men, saying things that kind of cater to or kind of tickle the ear of some of these kind of white identitarian ethno-state or nationalist types that doesn't really have any bearing on anything. There's no there's no plan. Like, I want to build a garden shed. What do I need? Do I need nails? Do I need wood? Do I need this? Do I need that? It's all just this just kind of wild like dreaming, and that just tends to go nowhere. Anyway, apparently, this strong Black nation is supposed to just spring forth at some point. Incredible. I know it is incredible because and then the funniest thing is I've always seen through this with a lot of the Black, power, Black identity, big talk, that it's just literally talk. And I always just kind of cringe a bit when I see any white person in these white movements take any of this remotely seriously. It's almost just a desire to be rid of like the Black menace and the Black problem without taking into account that they're literally just talking. Like, it's like when kids and they're like, oh man, we're going to build a spaceship and it's going to have like, I'm going to wear a cape and then I'm going to take these chairs in the living room and put some blankets over them. And it's almost like literally standing there as a fully adult person going, yeah, Jimmy, yeah, that's going to happen. Or you actually are going to do this and build something. Anywho. Indeed, we have all sorts of tools and frameworks for achieving goals these days. For instance, the SMART framework, which stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. You never hear these folks showing any kind of organization of the idea of a strong Black community in meaningful terms that can be grabbed hold of piece by piece and worked towards. Exactly, because most of it just is Black chest bumping, thumping against the evil white man, his evil white supremacy, and just a basic list of grievances. It's never like I always just want to ask like anybody in these ethno state or circles, when has any black person, male or female, ever shown up in any of these circles like, hey, you know, you American Renaissance reader, hey, you Luke 4 channel viewer, hey, you who insert whomever in these circles you want to like reference or mention, when do they ever show up and say, hey, this is our plan, this is our idea, this is what we want to do? Now granted, the same thing can be asked of a fair amount of the the whites in these separatist circles, and I'm not saying that that question doesn't belong there, but at least on the face in these streams and some of the IRL things that are happening and have happened, your book clubs, your pool parties, what have you, I have to imagine there's like there are leaps and bounds, at least in terms of meeting face to face and making plans, or at least forming groups of people involved in these things that are involved enough to care about these things to actually happen. Back to the article or the blog. Now, in terms of Black nation building, this is what transpires with Black women. I'm gonna before I think I can see that this is starting to turn just a pinch. Again, this isn't insanely long. Actually, I'll also pick this one's a little bit shorter. But before we do that, let me just kind of bounce back over. Yes, sound. Yay, sound. It was the fish era of white people. Interestingly enough, that like, there was some of that kind of revival when you go look at fish and like string cheese incident. See other really big kind of like yeah, so there was a little bit of that revivalness that happened. It's interesting how like a lot of that kind of roster culture, especially the more sex that more whites tended to fall into, that kind of replaced some of that kind of looking back and drawing back to the Woodstock. It gave whites of at least Gen X and beyond a little bit more of an immediate sense, a little bit of an immediate scene to draw from again, because Woodstock was that seminal one was just this one concert and this kind of one event. I mean, they did have them going forward after, but yeah. So I would actually, I don't know Fish super well, but I'll leave this in the chat. Billy Breathes. That's a great album. You can find pretty much most of it or all of it here on YouTube. When I was in high school, this kid did he took that album and kind of framed like a musical around it, and it was really cool. I really fell in love with that in high school, that album, and I still know some of the words like those by heart. Louis Farrakhan has the answer. Just trust him. Don't start thinking about things too much. Cheese pizza is funny. That's come up in a few discussions with folks where it's like, Black people just aren't gonna in the American ADOS, American Descendants of Slaves, general Black American culture. They're not, I call it the PQ, the pork question. That's one thing that I'm not gonna make everything hinge. Even for me, that seems a little bit like over the top, kind of stereotypical. Like, the Black folks ain't giving up their pork chops, y'all. Like we ain't giving up our pork chops. Funnily enough, like that's actually the pork question, even just amongst Black people, without even talking about Islam, has kind of come up because we have had so many generations of relatives and aunties and uncles, and they diabetes, eating hog maw and pork chops all day, that you've seen a lot of Black people kind of go away from the pork question on their own due to health reasons and just some other associated things that have kind of come into play. So, but yeah, Farrakhan, yeah, and the funny thing is that Farrakhan thing bugs me because every once in a while, I have an older video on this channel. I don't know how far back. This is back during the Hotep Jesus. There's some stream where some of back when Identity Europa was Identity Europa, and I don't know if you know who Bryden is. Right to Bryden. It's like him and like maybe two or three other like Identity Europa people have on Hotep Jesus and this other random Black guy. It's I'll go find it later. I don't want to get too distracted, but like where are we going? So Nation of Islam, Farrakhan. This is the idea that there's going to be these magical Black leaders that are going to come lead people to do anything. Islam and Nation of Islam attracts a certain sect of Black people, and it works for them. But in a collective sense, like oh, sorry, that's where I was going. Hotep Jesus ran a website. It was a Hotep Nation. Him and that Uncle Mayhem, Handy Mayhem guy, they were like the like two preeminent base black dudes in Trump hats of that kind of R the Donald 2016 era. And I think he wrote some piece that I like talked about on this channel. This is maybe like it's almost like a year ago, and they used the image of like was it George Lincoln Rockwell and some of his American Nazi Party crew at a Nation of Islam meeting, and you still see that pop up even like every once in a while you're like kind of like white nationalist identitarian type will post that photo like see guys back in 1950 something when George Lincoln Rockwell went to Nation Islam meeting, like, they're our natural allies or blah, 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 blah. Anyway, tangent over. So here's kind of where this shifts back more to Black women specifically. So I think I'll just read this before we get to this big chunk here and just kind of see what there is to comment on. Now, in terms of Black nation building, this is what transpires with Black women. Black woman sees Black man in the street. Black woman says to herself, that's a Black man. They are men to build a strong Black community with. Nothing considered about the type of Black man he is, if he is even willing to build this Black community in deeds of purpose, not lip service and I love my sisters speeches. Secondly, if he has the right ideological perspective for this Black nation to work. Nothing asked about what is his mentality. Do Black women realize that there is a critical absorption of white supremacy in a significant portion of Black men that renders a very large portion of them ineffective in the efforts towards Black advancement? So, just pausing there, that is way too much of the problem. It's like I see it's this whole, it's even just kind of goes back to the whole, hey brother, hey sister, back and forth on the street between Black people. And I really don't like this because it's just, it seemed like, I wonder I wonder when this really only became a thing, to like kind of address each other as such, or like, you still get that. And I really don't like it. I kind of noticed myself in some like more specific like Black woman circles or chats. Like if somebody says, hey sis, or this, that sis, it's more like just kind of like a colloquialism now than just some like expectation of some type of like identification or loyalty. But I don't know if I don't have where I take this. There's a critical absorption of white supremacy. You see, the funny thing is, I even ran this day on Twitter. I have to like take a I have to even with Black women that I'm like that in these specific Black women specific issues that I'm like pretty much anywhere from like 80% to like 110% in agreement with because of my like more pro-white dissident right, alt-right kind of overlap of views and opinions. I find myself kind of always like kind of wince a bit when I see the term white supremacy used. I would use a better term or maybe flesh it out, but that's because I have a pretty and I'm not saying this like, to like, show off here or make myself seem so special or something, but like I have a way more nuanced opinion about whites versus Blacks and white supremacy, just a term that I wouldn't personally use. But if I were to add some context or nuance here, that, obviously I didn't write this and I can't be in this person's head, but I would take that to be more, I would use a different word or I would flesh this out differently. You can say, especially the entertainment and sports culture has kind of lent itself more to more. No, it's way too much to unpack, and I'm not going to unpack it here. But just her saying, Black women just see, oh, a Black man. It's like the whole idea of like how many Black women were like, especially because I'll say this and I'll move on. When the Trayvon Martin thing happened, particularly that, because like it's funny that you talk to people in the alt right and with the post alt right. I'm gonna just really stick to the term post alt right because I don't want to say it doesn't exist anymore, but obviously so much has transpired the past few years that things really sit on a different place than they were even right before the election, right after the election, and then everything kind of before that. There's just something distinctly different about even the same people that we still see around today. There's something distinctly different from what was kind of culminating as a term alt-right. So basically, it's funny when you talk about Trayvon Martin, this was like what year was that? I don't even remember anymore. It feels like, even when I say this, like you find I've run into black women in these circles who are like, man, I remember, when that happened, I was like mourning for him, and he was like, he could have been my son. The Obama even said that if I had a son, he looked like Trayvon. And that moment in that trial and the whole George Zimmerman thing becomes this. It's interesting how that, even when you talk to certain black women in general BWE, and you talk to certain like post alt right dissident writers, that event, depending on who they are, and also you have to add, are they American, or were they living here, or were they someone abroad that, is white and heard about it, and just the kind of way the racial discussion of this country shifted around that trial. It's funny seeing that being such a seminal moment. So just specifically hearing this term that she's saying, like, oh, I saw this black man on the street. It's the way that black women have just kind of collectively look at black men, as every black man could be their son, their uncle, their cousin, their father, their brother. But on the flip side, that's not how black men in any collective sense tend to operate. They don't see their sister, their daughter, their mother in the face of every black woman that has some type of, you know, issue or problem befall them. So so that's the one thing I would just add to that. So I think it's a weird parallel, but this idea of black women on the street just sees, you know, this guy and thinks, oh, we can build together. We're a race, we're a community, we're this, we're that. Anywho, in addition, the self-serving perspective in politics of black men is so plain to see. Me, serve me, cater to me. It is also through the roof at this point. This is directly opposed to the level of self-sacrifice that will clearly and undeniably be required from them for any such black nation building. As I mentioned in the last post, you only need to look at the fact that black men are just displaying all the wrong priorities in terms of black nation building. They have a well-known and documented problem with black female achievers as a clear example. Yet these are the women black men should have been queuing around the block for if black advancement was strongly on their mind. Consider this. If black nationhood was a priority for black men, do you think 70% of black children will be born outside of wedlock with the attendant poverty and lack of safety these children are more likely to experience? I can assure you that men who know the central position black children have in the race's future will do everything in their power to be with their kids, and complaints will mount to heaven if black women try to deny black men access. So it's a bit in that paragraph. I guess I'll just kind of hone in on the latter half, because especially in that midpoint, this is a constant, and I run into this with white circles. I run into this, well, not the black circles I run into. You don't see it. I don't see it that much anymore. But that's a key thing. Do you really think that if a race of people really cared about the future, that 70%, and even the 70% number deserves some unpacking, because when even this discussion that we're having this week about, Meghan Markle, Archie, what's biracial, what's black, what's mixed race, the 70% number could also have a fair amount of just racially mixed one drop rural people, some Hispanic or Latina that kind of, is more black identifying, depending on what forms you fill out, where you sit on the census. Some people just go black, just to go black. They don't really bother with the other to, like, flesh out, well, my mom is like fully black American, but my father is part, Caribbean, part Puerto Rican, et cetera, and so forth. But but yeah, so if this nation building were to happen, and this is still a discussion that has been run into today, is change. So as we move into the Facebook post, there is a distinct difference between what she's saying here in 2009 and what's being said today. A lot of this has now kind of been very much digested in the present and likely future BWE and where it tends to move. That black women, unlike what she's seeing here a decade ago, a fair amount, not some critical mass, I wouldn't even say 50%, but definitely more women today versus when this post was originally written 10 years ago, do see exactly what she's saying. And especially in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement and all the hand wringing and the we're going to march for Mike Brown and march for Trayvon, a fair amount of black women do understand this. They showed up, they put their fists in the air, they pulled out their Sharpies, they marched against the white man's police, yelled and screamed. And those same women, and then especially the thing is, especially the older black women, who are like 40 plus, who are still kind of holding on to like kind of the delusions that she's laying out in this blog. The younger generations who are more clued to social media. So after you march with Trayvon and Mike Brown, and you like ask the white supremacy why they're killing your sons and are they killing your brothers, you go back and look and realize that there really is nothing there's nothing here to really build or nothing to do. They don't really care. And this nation building is just it's just a sham. Now, there is a thing called entry level requirement. For instance, in order to study engineering, you must at least know basic math. There's an entry level requirement. That is an entry level requirement. Now, how possible is it to have a strong black community without strong black families? The basic entry level requirement for black men who are really linked into the black nation building agenda keen would be a keen interest in marrying and setting up the home with a black woman. Yet black men are not even coming in at that entry level to take note. I once got into this discussion. I was introduced, actually, I mentioned this anecdote before. I was introduced to, this is all just like strictly online, to this black man through someone in a white identitarian alt-righty scene. And we'd exchanged a few emails. There's a few things that kind of bugged me all along. But by the time, after maybe chatting maybe once a week via email or so for like a month and a half, I ended up sending. I might actually do this video on this letter because it'd be interesting to like read this and revisit what I said. But I was kind of just on the. It was like I was on the cusp of this kind of BWE red pill. It was already there and it's been probably with me all my life. But I think with this happened like what, 2 maybe 3 years ago already. And this blood email I wrote back because I really wanted to make sure I did this properly. I wrote it like in Google Docs and then I just copy pasted to email. And I hit that what she's kind of saying here, because he keeps coming back to like, oh, where's a black family? A nation needs a family first. You even see this in the distant alt right, where this red pill MGTOWism has kind of burrowed itself way too deep into too many segments to where there's like these two things. You either need more white babies and you need to get them, or all women are like, I don't want to like be that broad and say that that's what every single person is saying, but there's so much as women they're all having sex with black men, they're all riding the cock carousel, the thousand cock stare. There has to be something said about families. You don't get your nation or ethno state until you get your families in order. A lot of the black women that need to be married and need to be passing their genes on to have any semblance of saving this race, you see many of them unmarried. It's your Tanya at the office. It's, LaShawn who, works, some type of like, blue collar, white collar ish, job someplace. Probably has like, maybe he's married, maybe divorced, maybe just had one kid because she felt the clock ticking and she just wanted to move on and still have like a black baby to add to discussion, which again in itself is a problem. Too many black women have over the past few generations just made the choice that they rather have, instead of like building a family or setting the requirements as women in a given society to make men fall into line, like you don't have sexual access if you don't produce, provide, or protect. Collectively, black women have thrown that out the window. And I guess that's always been the case since we really have gotten here to this country. I want to go someplace with that to flesh what I just said out, but I know that it'll just take me off someplace else. So just in closing, if black nationhood were a priority, you would see black men and black women married. Oh, that's why one of the key things I said in this email to this black man was like, look, to be honest, if you really want to look at it this way, why not just be married to a black woman and a black woman be married to a black man, produce children in wedlock, and build cohesive family units? Now, this is something you see with white men, with Asians, with other different groups of men. They'll be married, and let's say going back to her white supremacy line. I think one thing she might be insinuating, again, this is conjecture and it's an assumption I'm making. Even being black and black men in particular in a society that is built on white Western European traditions, standards of beauty, what have you. You being black compared to like other groups of non-black, non-white men like Asians or Hispanics, we're kind of maybe in the four rung, ladder at the bottom. It makes sense for you to look further up at the white man's women, his society, the world that he's built, and be attracted to that and want access to that. So I said so much in this email to this guy. I was like, well, look, why didn't you all these black men just stay married and stay in the home, TM, and just marry and produce children with black women, pass on the genetic wealth, pass on familial wealth in a nuclear family marriage. But if you want to have sex, with white women on the side, or have a little white girlfriend somewhere on the side, so you got that sexual access and that sexual feeling and that feeling of having like one of the white man's daughters. I To a certain degree, that it's considering what has happened and how weird and this race has fallen off, it really would have actually maybe been kind of quasi preferable as long as black women and black children were produced, provided, and protected within a black familial unit. If you want to have a white mistress on the side, if enough of you had made that choice, as long as you were married to and producing fully black children, and don't get me wrong, not producing out of wedlock children with mistresses all over the place, but that would have actually, maybe looking now in 2019 backwards, over the past few generations, that actually might have been way more preferable. And perhaps, particularly as American blacks, we wouldn't see so much of the disintegration and so much of the dysgenic practices and behaviors that we have today, had maybe enough black men have made that choice. Whether you were like the local lawyer, the local like foreman on a job, whatever, wherever you fell, if that was so necessary, be married, produce black families. If you need to get some type of gratification from the white man's products, his women, his greater societies on the side, do that, but keep the genetic wealth and the economic wealth contained within black families. So I'll just pause again. I'm just going to look at the chat. We're closing in on this piece. I'm just kind of, again, just moving through, just kind of like a blast in the past. So just there, before I move over to the chat for a second, that's literally what, so this is still a common refrain today that we still see in 2019, even though the difference now is this message and what she's saying here, has been a lot more absorbed, and with black women centered in these kind of circles, and even black women who are kind of on the fringes of it, are starting to absorb this and just say, wait a second, there's something not right here. So I wouldn't say that none of this has been solved, but at least just reading particularly that passage, it's moved further on. And at the very least, even more of your average middle of the road black women are saying, well, this isn't going to happen. This is what should have been happening. We need to move on. And this is probably what's been the problem for so long, that there's not enough families, not enough, there's no nation without family. And to get a family, you have to have a man and a woman to come together and produce. It's a, I guess now it's the realization of, like, a living racial ethnic adage about the chicken before the chicken before the horse. I don't know where I came with that. With the cart before the horse. My bad. The cart before the horse. The chicken before the horse, y'all. The chicken before the horse. Oh wow, hey. There's a lot of people to kind of move backwards into and take a look at. So you know what? This is winding towards the end. So I will move back over to the chat, and I'll just probably move a little bit quicker through this, unless I have something really pertinent to say, and take a breather, because the Facebook one, the original post of the author and plus Black was trying to attempt to say, that'll definitely be some little kind of segment there. So I'm just going to move this really quickly, take a breather now, and I'll just look back over the chat. But hey, every other person that's here and that's here, that's awesome. And I'm glad that you stopped by to listen. And, if anything too, if anybody's interested in chatting and who wanted to come on, that'd be totally cool. as well. So if anyone's interested, just let me know and I'll send you the link. And I think I'd want to like at least read the two Facebook ones, like the original post. I don't have to read completely what I said. I'll just kind of, I'm probably just going to flesh through what she said because it was just really riveting and it really just struck me. And I left this like 3 or 4 paragraph like response. Anywho, I'll finish this, move back over to chat. If anybody's listening that happen to want to come on, by all means, that'd be totally cool. So, anyway, back to the article. In terms of other indications, the incarceration rates of Black men would be halved and the college rates would be doubled. But yes, I know Black women are not supposed to go deep and ask these critical questions and crucial questions. We are supposed to gloss over the details that are necessary to get to the destination and just flow along in the spirit to the wonderful kumbaya idea of a Black nation that's going to happen, i.e., I will get there. I will get there somehow. Since any Black man qualifies for this nation building in our calculations and is just right for the job, regardless of his mindset and perspectives on core Black issues, many of us Black women will have to build a nation with colorist Black men who don't care to give the archetype Black woman a chance. I think she meant archetypical. Uh, this is what it will boil down to. Yet, isn't this totally contravening the basic premise of building a Black nation? Or maybe we should adjust the idea, since we always have to tailor things to fit around whatever way Black men choose to go. If it wasn't so sad how essentially Black women are clamoring to build with men, half who really have no interest in such grand schemes for the race, because they can't think beyond self-indulgence, and another quarter who might just be tempted to commit, provided the Black woman is light enough, it would be a good comedy. The very simplistic way in which Black women look at the whole Black nation building project just shows that it would be better confined to the realm of daydream or fantasy that Black women might flee to in their imaginations every now and then while simply getting on with the reality of life. So that's a quick pause there because it just doesn't amount to anything. And this is probably at the heart of, so when you hear the whole 1960s, WIC welfare discussion, without I know I've hammered on that one way too many videos. So basically, this idea that everything just every Black family was some little nuclear unit in 1960. Then at midnight, 1959 at midnight, the clock everything just turned upside down. I think arguably what happened is for me it's like Black women just never really found anything to do. And I think the intoxication of the civil rights movement and the Great Society and the Civil Rights Acts, particularly for Black Americans, even people who weren't really directly tied to those events changing and moving and grooving along, that just became this. Black women never realized that they had to make different choices or that things had to move in a certain direction. We just kind of, I'm saying we in this broad, stroke here. I wasn't alive in the 1960s or 70s. There just became this, there was just never a way to go. And I think those movements, particularly in America, and you see the kind of echoes of it and just kind of parallels to like, the decolonization efforts in Africa, you know, Europe, the white settler, European types, kind of like, also having a parallel experience of we got to get rid of white rule, blacks should move their own lands, or here in America, Jim Crow segregation, the history of slavery, etc. We need to move beyond that. It became intoxicating, I imagine, for a lot of Black women. We were all free. Our men were like, whether they were your Martins or your Malcolms and all the assorted, Black male figures, your preachers, your pastors, your kind of community activist class, your class, your Black Panthers, all of your kind of Black leaders at every level, a lot of those local city guys leading the charge, just there was this intoxication and our Black men are going to lead us. We're free from like the evil white man, his white supremacy, and just this kind of imagination delusion that she's referencing kind of here in this piece is what I think became the problem with Black women. They didn't understand that these things weren't static, and even just kind of going into these like movements, it was all just this kind of big delusion in a sense. And Black women just been playing this make believe imaginary, kind of ghost dance. It was almost like we were all just the same as whites, like chocolate, just dipped in chocolate or something. And our men were just like everybody else's men. and our race, now free from the evil whitey, was just going to fall into place like everyone else's. And that's not what happened. Back to the blog about building with colorless black men. Marcus Garvey. He wanted to build a strong black nation, Africa for Africans and all that, but he wanted to do it with the lightest black women available. At his side is the symbolic black queen, LOL. And he had black women with the same ancestral looks he had, throwing money at him, nay, taking him very seriously. I repeat, Marcus Garvey was in favor of building with the lightest of black women. Lightest of us black women. Now, I get the Garvey. I've had a few people, particularly in the alt-right, dissident right scene, what about Garvey? What about Garvey? And, and I'm always, now, because I mean, there's a large part of me, I never was really, I've never read, like, Native Son. I've read a little bit of Baldwin. I never went through like some black literature, black separatist, black nationalist. I never went through any of those phases. So I'm very much just rudimentarily familiar with a lot of these different men and movements and pieces. So arguably a lot of like what I end up kind of putting together in my head is a little bit of secondhand found knowledge and just the people things, anecdotes and things that people share with me. So using the alt-right, dissident right scene, I get, there's this black, back to Africa, black nationalist, black specific focused people we should hear about. Here's Marcus Garvey. Here's a few things that he was trying to do. But especially by the time I started to hear that from the dissident right, alt-right, I don't think it was here with Halima or this piece, but I've come across this about Marcus Garvey in a lot of different black women's specific spaces like this that allude to the fact that he was, I guess, for lack of a better word, problematic. And particularly if, and I think I've heard this kind of colorism thing come up a bit. Now it's funny, Martin Luther King. Now this Steve Saylor had a hold on. Steve Saylor had a thread about Obama. This is like a few months ago, and I remember commenting a bit. Just the idea that Barack Obama dated quite a, he was like this half black kid, lived a pretty decent middle class life. Fair amount of his girlfriends were white, but to go be the black, aka biracial mulatto leader man of the world, it wasn't going to be a good look to have some white or Jewish woman on his arm. And then he meets Michelle Obama. You get the story, but even with Martin Luther King, I mean, everybody knows the whole, he liked to bang white prostitutes, that whole thing. But apparently, there's a rumor too that there might have been a white woman or two that he fancied. But then this is a key. So then they can't get the white women they want. They pick the lightest, brightest, lighter than a brown paper bag type of black women, i.e., like a Coretta Scott King, to take up with. So it doesn't surprise me at all. I have to go dig for this. I think I Facebook saved this somewhere. I hope I did. Because apparently there's a story, a short fictional story by W.B. Du Bois. It's like some science, it's kind of like a pre-proto Afro-futurist short story that this black woman in a chat kind of just laid out the just spoilers alert. She gave us the whole story kind of summarized, where this black man, it's like some futuristic thing he takes up with some white woman. I think there's a black woman in it, but it was just surprise. It was just the way this was laid out was very surprising. It was surprising, but not that this kind of goes back pretty far. Like when they can't get white women, and again, this is where even the Meghan Markle Archie thing kind of comes up, because I've been tweeting with someone on Twitter, about this, and I've been trying to find the best way to say that beyond the racial admixture question, it also comes down to when everyone's black, that means, I'm going to go on a tangent, and I don't want to go on a tangent. Basically, I would like to find out more about Marcus Garvey, particularly, if there, what if and what the colorist angle with him is, because then that's another key reason why a lot of this whole Black nation building will fail, because it's going to leave. I guess it'll just leave black women who look like me, who are phenotypically black, unambiguously black. It's going to leave me like to just maybe breed more darker skinned Marcus Garveys, so that they can partner up with the lightest and the brightest amongst us. And then again, where would they even get the source? I mean, that would take more race mixing, producing, biracial light daughters. I mean, I guess maybe siphoning off a few white women, to produce children with them so they keep their supply of their light, bright women. But again, so she talks about black women living in this daydream, because this is something that, especially if you're referencing Marcus Garvey, who lived like almost damn near 100 years ago, and this was a problem. So so here we go. This is a great past to present conversation right here, because look at the Kardashians and look at the children that Kim and Courtney and Kylie are producing right now. So it's almost like black women, this has been in front of their faces for goddamn 100 years, actually longer. Let's just round it out and say 100 years. And whether it's Marcus Garvey choosing the light, bright, damn near whites amongst them, it still continues to this day, but and that stays the same, just like black women's willful obtuseness stays the same as well. Back to this blog. Do you know that the trend spread because black men took their hmm. Do you know that the trend spread do you know that the trend spread because black men took their cue from him, as he was a man of influence? He reinforced and endorsed their views of seeking the most Euro looking black women. If you think I'm joking, pick up a copy of Autobiography of Malcolm X and see how his father, a staunch Garveyite, was married to a woman who could pass for white. I mean, it could well be a coincidence, of course, but I wouldn't put it past the fact that he copied his mentor right down to the woman he chose as bride. The white men at the time must have been laughing their asses off with the answers of these freedom fighters, and the joke was definitely on the black women who chose to reject the clear, in your face statements being made against them and the choices of men like Marcus Garvey, so much so they handed over money and finances enterprise. Wow, there you go, right there. Because actually, I think this ended up. Who was I talking to? This is some. It'll come to me in a second. On someone's stream. Oh, I think it was like a bad stream. Like I jumped. It was some random morning, and there was some talk. There was some black guy on there, like, oh well, black women just can't stand when we're with white women. Her. And the first thing immediately that jumped in my mind is the Kardashian family, the lip kits, the clothes, even down to like the style. There's like this kind of That's like eh, that's not a good analogy. It's black women either loving them, loathing them, but copying them, and they put a lot of money in their pockets. And beyond money, since so much now is like this kind of social media influencer class and status, and that type of thing. Well, the point that I made is just like she's saying, black women were happy to throw money over. They put plenty of money in the Kardashians' pockets over the years, and it's still the same thing. It's almost like if I was to go over to Stormfront or a TRS blog and be like, hey, you know, well they're divorced now, but like I don't think a whole lot of, or at least a certain groups of white men wouldn't maybe necessarily want to be putting money in Heidi Klum's pocket while she's, married to a full black man. But black women just simply don't care. I mean, there's a lot of arguments for this. Is it just general self loathing? Is it just like, well, we kind of, in some ways, accept and believe that we're less than these lighter skinned women or less these biracial women, and then later on, once more the social restraints lift up, we're less than these uh, white women. So we'll finance and put money in the pocket of our brothers who are uplifting themselves into, well, I think I'll leave this here and just move to the end of this. I didn't say this. I'm totally lifting this from Kendall St. Charles, because it's funny when we talk about the red pill, the black pill, in a lot of these circles. And then she said this, and I was like, oh my God, if you think about the civil rights movement in the 1960s, Loving versus Virginia, this way, you could use the same kind of like phrasing. So if you think of the civil rights movement less about the uplift of black people in a collective sense, black men, black women, black children, into black families or better black families, and then from there, a viable black nation, or yeah, and I don't even say the nation like a sovereign, like land, borders, language, culture, just in a cohesive black unit. She said this once, and I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, "Oh my God, that was it." It was the 1960s and civil rights movement and those statues, the Great Society, all the civil rights, all that, sitting at a Woolworths counter next to white folks. So she said the civil rights movement and dot 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 and that whole thing. It was not about black general family uplift. It was about integrating the black man between the white woman's thighs. And I was like, girl, you done said it all. You done said a mouthpiece. Now I had to sit there for a second with that. And I was like, whoa. So like that's almost like a reddish black pill maybe for black women. But again, since we support it, you see it to this very day. You're seeing it in a lot of these discussions that have been happening the past few days regarding Meghan Markle. But this has been going on with her, Meghan Markle in particular, since it became public that her and Prince Harry were dating. And it's really just it's all been, and it kind of got a little bit muted. They had the wedding and then everything kind of quieted down. Then she's been pregnant, and so she was pregnant for like a damn year. And then obviously the past few days, a lot of this stuff has just come bubbled back up to the surface. But man, oh man, I was like, whoa, that just says it all. Um, so have you ever seen any pictures of Marcus Garvey? I mean, he's the archetype of black man, non-apologetically looking black. One of my favorite activities to come up with is with analysis and frameworks which speak to and perfectly delineate the situation for us black women, as I believe that all the analysis of isms and oppression out there do not and were not made for black women, and black women need to come up with their own analysis. And one of the most groundbreaking analysis I have come across in blogosphere was written by an internet personality called Sankranath, who wrote that what we often rush to refer to as self-hating black men is actually more accurately an ideology of black equals male and white equals female. A black man that expresses hatred for black women is not expressing self-hatred. Oh, I thought maybe we should just emphasize that. I didn't click over to that link, so I'll go look at that. Hmm. I'll have to go look at that later. I wonder if this is, oh no, that isn't her. Okay. Read this analysis and see what we rush to label self-hate is actually black female hate. And when black women misdefine issues, as they are often encouraged to do, they end up with the wrong solutions. I've said this before and say it again, that unless black women accurately identify and pin down what ails them and their issues, they will never be able to marshal an effective defense against the attacks that are raining down from every angle. So, in summary, are we building a black community? If we are, we would know first to take stock to find out if the necessary materials are assembled. We would get a roadmap to the goal. There would be an understanding that there is a caliber of black men in particular required to take forward the vision. Sadly, we would realize that there is a standard required beyond what today's black man is offering unless something drastic happens to change mindsets. And don't hold your breath because I know many may want to take this as an issue of faith, but it isn't. It's a practical issue. All right, so that's the end of that piece. So yeah, I'll maybe throw this out eventually. Like I want something. I need to do some Garvey research because this comes up into the two different ponds that I kind of find myself kind of floating around. I really want a better understanding of Garvey, particularly his life and his choices, because especially if what she's, because I've come across this in a few different places, and I would like to know a little bit more. I think her conclusion kind of says it all. So if anything, this whole piece, a lot of this, it hasn't been resolved, but a decade later, I can solidly say that through enough circles, and they're still in the fringes. Well, it's almost like if you the race question amongst all post alt right, this and the right, has kind of like gone a lot further. Even your more average MAGA Pete is talking more about immigration. It's not what you'll see like further in like, the depths of like certain blogs and certain websites, certain YouTube channels and streams. But some of the general ideas have kind of bubbled up to the surface, and you can't just lay it all at the feet of like, a few shit posters, a few channers, moving things there. I mean, that does have something to do with it. So just over here on this side of the pond, everything she's saying here now is being a lot more examined, and you're seeing it kind of filter upwards. I wouldn't say that any of this has been solved, but it is interesting to go back now to 2009, literally a decade ago, and I can safely say that these ideas have been entertained. That even I found them, and other Black women, other BWE types have found them, and huh, that'll be easier to look at when the Kardashians are directly mentioned the um in the second piece. So I'm gonna look at the chat. I'm gonna just kind of move through a little bit quickly and see, what's up and say hey. Um, I think I already said hi to Cheese Pizza, and I'll do that again. I'm just starting right after when I told everybody to go listen to Fish. Thanks for the I gotta listen to that tonight before I go to bed. Problem runs. I'm not gonna read out loud because I used to do that a lot. It probably makes me sound kind of goofy on the other end. I'll read something out loud that I'm actually gonna directly reference. Otherwise, I'm just like reading like I'm in first grade again. It is a cultural anthropology study. Yeah, it really does. White people don't get how. Yeah, there's just so many like nuances, and so for instance, I'm trying to think something someone white just said to me about something, and in my head I was thinking this is almost like when you hear more white and more heavily anti-white liberals say more black people are in jail for marijuana. Oh, it's the whole well, more black people were married before welfare in the '60s, but it's not. That's not really telling you much of anything about anything else. It's just telling you. So when the typical, white, mostly white liberal, but I mean, you even get some of your Turning Point USA, PragerU type, normie cuck right wingers who will throw that at you, but they're not ever telling you anything else beyond that. So more it's probably the reason more of them are in jail because, well, one, we know that certain municipalities, certain cities, and certain states to keep some of the crime, the jail rates, prison rates lower, to change some of the stats. If somebody comes in, they maybe pulled a grand theft auto and they hit somebody with the barrel of the gun and they had a bag of weed. By the time the public defender, the prosecution, and everybody runs the case through the beginning from the beginning of the crime to sentencing, you can very well just end up with a pot charge. So that changes the nature of or just more people there for weed. Well, hell, if Grand Theft Auto got walked down to no, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not anything like that, but just when you walk back some types of crimes so that the person maybe only ends up with a pot charges, that has something to do with it. Is the nature of, for instance, when I worked for a restaurant, like a restaurant chain in college, and there was this kind of white hippie couple. They were married and they both worked there, and they had two young kids. And he sold weed, and I bought weed from him, and he was just doing it for fun. He wasn't rolling around with a gun in his car. There wasn't the type of kind of more black criminal underclass where it's their full-time job. This man worked at a restaurant, and him and his wife worked there. They were just kind of hell, they probably listened to Fish. This was just so it would be highly unlikely unless he just got busted or somebody ratted him out or something like that. It was from what I understood at the time, because it's only a summer that I worked there at this location, that it was just something that they did to make a little extra cash. They like to smoke weed, in the way most white people that I've known that have sold marijuana. They just do it to just do it. It's not their solitary income. They're not rapping about it. They're not killing people about it. Anyway, damn it. I went on a tangent again, but I like what you were saying there. So if you're white, here I'm doing it again. I'm reading, so if you don't hear me say anything, I'm reading. You sometimes feel the need in your streaming just to say something to kind of fill out the time. People just think you're sitting here quietly, not doing something. But anyway, I'm just gonna read without reading out loud. Yeah, when you get the race realism thing, it's weird because I guess I'll say this. I think I always had that inclination, and I think enough of my life circumstances and choices already have fleshed out enough in my childhood and early youth years to always have been a race realist. But this black woman specific thing, that I really kind of really started to understand and kind of come into within the past few years. I think that hit me a lot harder. I think I always was race real. I think I always understood that, but I didn't understand just being a Black woman in that specific identity, more in relation to my own race and my own like group. That has been the thing that's probably been the hardest. And I almost wonder if this is what, like, if you're just some normie white person and you start, you know, you're on some site here and you kind of find yourself like, in the race realist, HBD, you find yourself, you stumble across an American Renaissance article and you just, so it's almost like, I think that was like the parallel experience for me that kind of was a little bit more of the body blow. I think I always knew that Black people, white people were different, but this has been kind of like the Black woman side of things, the specificness of it. That's been kind of like a little bit more of the mental and emotional body blow, for instance. So, yeah. Hey, Philip Daniel. Is least partly attraction to a more neo-tenuous group white European women, just as white men are attracted to East European women? Yeah, yeah, and it's funny. The person I was on my Twitter feed today that I was kind of talking with about this, and this has been kind of, and I think I need another day or so to kind of flesh out this Megan Archie thing, because in a way, we're talking about something that's similar, but we're also talking about two different things. But I don't want to. I'm gonna have to come back to that because I like that you said that because you're kind of saying something that someone else had said to me previously that I want to get into. Many blacks are stuck in survival mode. Middle class ones have trouble letting these folks go. Yeah, hey, and Vogelfold, exactly that, and I think there's something that Kendall had kind of laid out, like survivor's guilt. The quote unquote good blacks. I really, really loathe that term because a lot of your like middle classy Black people with the good jobs. It can be some. I mean, it's just such a. It's not an either or, good, bad, black or white. Like a stark scale of things. The middle class ones, yeah, because the thing is, there's not enough separation for us as a racial group, especially amongst Black Americans. So if you think about your Black middle class, more often than not, unless you're talking about a generational, like 3 or 4 generations, if you're not talking about the Black people who probably have a large amount of free Blacks in their family line continuously from like maybe the 1800s that carry through the Civil War after. There's not any enough sizable Black lineages that exist in any kind of function like that. So a lot of what we think of as the general Black middle class or the Black people all kind of coming out of the general Great Migration sharecropper pool that find themselves in the North and spread out around the country. So Black middle class for a lot of Black people really only means people who, hell, and so then this goes back to Great Society and Civil Rights Act. You have a lot of Black people who are only really what we call middle class because they, left the South and came north. They got government jobs. They worked at your Fords, your factories, etc. And if you talk about the 70s and the offshoring and the beginning of like the kind of, where Ross Perot would later call the Great Sucking Sound, that was already in play for about a good 20, 30 years. A lot of Black middle class people are really only one step or two steps, a generation half removed from, their sharecropper, children of the sharecropper, children and grandchildren of sharecroppers who started coming north in the 50s and 60s. So even the letting go is tough because it's almost not even letting go, because a lot of us in that broad swath, we're all really still only 2 generations, maybe 3 or so, from those people. The middle class amongst Black people in a sizable sense has really only existed in a large part in the post-World War II era. Not to say that, I'll stop there because then I'll tangent again. Yep, definitely racial inferiority. I can see that. Oh, hey, it's John Harris and Chaz B98. Hello. Again, I'm just moving down, and so trying to quickly read and catch up before I move over. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, denial of reality. Just take a look at this exchange here. I'm just going to mute myself for 1 second because I just want to move through real quick. And okay, I'm unmuting for a second. And actually, I need to take a quick, am I still screen sharing? I'm going to unscreen share for 1 second because it'll take, I don't say I hate this, but like, you notice how we're like kind of moving back and forth, like, especially when I'm on the chat page, which I kind of hate doing. It's happy with me to open that up someplace separately so I can't like, because so you can see all the like stuff moving around, and like I hate when the boxes get all like Russian dolly on people. I don't like that. It makes it look so weird to me. So I think we'll just play you guys a little song, and then I'm gonna go step away for a second. Let's see. Since we were talking about my fish people, my fish Billy Breeze album. Now again, I don't have the best audio for this stuff yet, so bear with me. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm mute. Okay, this is like a oh my god, Free is like the best. It's like the best. It's like the first song of this album. So what I'm gonna do again. My apologies, I don't have the best audio set up. I'm gonna let you guys listen to Little Fish. Just thank you, Cheese Pizza, for referencing that. I think that's a perfect kind of relaxing thing to hear. I wonder you guys can hear this if I have the button, right? Otherwise it's just gonna reverberate out. I can't remember. I haven't done this in a long time. Played music on the side because I can't remember if I take the earbuds out and it's just playing, it'll just sound weird, right? I don't remember. Well, you know that I will be back shortly, so we're just gonna have to find out the hard way. No, it has to be out. Never mind. I remember now. Let me see if I don't get the audio too off. This just starts blaring. It's gonna be weird, and my roommate isn't asleep, but I don't want it to be like crazy, like wow. So I'm gonna take the buds out. I'm gonna hit play. Wait, no. Now I'm like sitting here. Well, hey, we'll find out one way or the other. We're gonna find out right now, and then I'll come back and you can tell me like, hey, dude, we didn't hear anything, you dummy, or maybe you do. So anyway, I'm gonna step away for a second. I'm gonna come back. I think I'll read the Facebook comment. I'll come back into the chat, and I think I can just figure it out when I get back. I don't think I have to go re-edit the schedule of events. I can just step away and then come back. So just give me like 2 minutes. Listen, enjoy some fish. I'm gonna take the buds out, and then I'll hit play. I'm just gonna suck. Oh, find out the hard way. In the flip a lot. I feel the feeling I forgot. Sitting weightless in the womb, bouncing gently round the room. In a minute I'll be free, and you'll be splashing in the sea.
No curiosity. I see out ahead of me. In a minute I'll be free, and you'll be splashing in the sea. We'll hear a tiny cry as the ship goes sliding by. Free.
All right, so that was Free by Fish from the album Billy Breathes. So I was only halfway caught up with the comments and I had to run downstairs. So I'm just gonna jump to the end. I see no complaints. Yes, Free or Character Zero. That's actually the next one after that. It's actually the second track after it's actually the second track after Free. So yeah, so I see you guys are discussing and having some chats here. So it looks like mostly just kind of conversation amongst the fellow chat listeners. So I'm just gonna search for a few. I think Cheese asked me a few things. People won't touch this, but you have to understand that there were controls in place that made black people kind of behave and act like families. Yeah, I've said this in some other older videos here. The whole thing, oh, we need more fathers in the home. I agree. Well, and I used to always retort, hey, we could bring back the sundown laws and the Jim Crow, and then they will be in the home. How about this? Black families have to like be together between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Uh, Maybe some microchips or some ankle bracelets. I don't know. Up for discussion there. Why not? So yeah, I do see that in a very, I mean, I don't want to say tongue in cheek. It's not, I don't think it's tongue in cheek, but there is something to be said about that. And there were those see, those restrictions were in place. And if you go back and kind of bird's eye view out to the general race realist human biodiversity argument about sub-Saharan Africans evolving in certain climates, certain types of behaviors, matrilineal societies, certain structures that are different, way different than what happened. I guess maybe a kind of ice people versus sun people discussion. Anyway, I'll just not go too much over there. But yeah, there were certain things in place. I'm not confusing causation correlation, but there were Jim Crows and KK make sure black people and black families stayed intact. Yeah, or if anything, it's not directly that was their intention. If you weren't allowed to like eat in certain places, you weren't allowed to live in certain places. If you took up with some person of another race or something, they're the byproduct of certain restrictions ended up keeping them more together. But as what's kind of what's been dug more into in more the BWE circles over time is looking to see that a lot of this was so yeah, they were forcing people to stay together, but without those restrictions, I mean, especially in this that blog piece by Halima, when those are gone, the true motivations and intentions tend to show themselves that we see today, that predominantly you're going to have a large or segment of black men who go, hey, well, I have the option A over here and B over there, C over there. That's what I want, where I want to go, where I want to be. A lot of this idea of black families being intact just meant that they didn't have anyone else to lean on but each other because they shared the same race. There were certain restrictions in place, and they just stayed together, not because of this idea of desiring or making a family, but yeah, just kind of like a lot of ways what you're saying, because they had nowhere else to go. But without those restrictions and with other options, we can see today where people have kind of chosen to cast their lot. Yep, and the black migration from the South messed things up. I used to hear this joke. I came across this once in some kind of more white nationalist circle. Like someone said, I think it was a Southerner said, "Well, see, this is the South's revenge for the Civil War and Reconstruction, and just how absolutely reduced to shit the South ended up after it." And so, in a weird kind of dark karmic way, all the blacks going north, and the fallout of your Detroits, your Clevelands, your Garys, and etc. That's what you end up getting in the end. So, and there's no way that everything is peachy keen no days for black women. Oh no, not at all. Yep, a lot of those things were covered up, and it's still today. We got to protect, the race and protect our image, and not yeah, there is a little bit of that. It's all this, I guess people call the term respectability politics to a large degree too. And you still see, and again, it's a shame. It's a shame tied to it. Anyway. Oh, no way. Oh, hey, Beaker, you changed your cheese pizza. Nice. Now I'm hungry. Thanks a lot. Oh, no, I'm glad I saw that. Thanks for letting me know. Yo. Yeah, the race riots didn't help, and the funny thing is, so many of them and a lot of that fallout happens after whites just kind of give in and give up on, and throw the Great Society, at black people's feet. In the restructuring of laws, a lot of the social changes that happen from the federal government all the way down to your state and local governments. Um, and to still have those race riots as a fallout, and especially a Detroit, you don't ever really see the I mean, they still in a way live with the fallout and those scars today. Yep, Chaz, they absolutely do. It doesn't make any sense. Uh, but again, it was, I guess Kendall St. Charles let the bodies hit the floor. I because I think a lot of this BWC, especially the past, I would say maybe past 2 years, 3 years, Most people just kind of sit down and they look and they go, I think like she even said herself, she had to have her kind of reawakening and have her like kind of secondary red pill about this. It's not, black men are completely oppressing black women and everybody's just, holding black women, down, oppressing them. When you realize that black women in way too many senses of the terms and their actions and their deeds, they too many of them like this. They like throwing money at, the Marcus Garveys with they like bright, damn near white wives. They like throwing their money at lip kiss from Kylie Jenner and uplifting the Kardashian clan. When you realize that way too many black women just don't get it. When we move to the Facebook post, I might think I'll drag this one up, but she made the same original poster made a point. Nobody's this whole thing. Oh, because one of the key things that she makes in the original post is that it's not about swirling. It's not about black women taking their bullshit from this black community over to white men or any other non-black race of men. This is not what this is about, because you're going to end up with the same mess. It's going to look different and have a different hue, but you're going to end up with a lot of the same problems. So let me just kind of finish that thought. So yeah, I finally am convinced that just for at least I think 50% seems a little heavy-handed, but I would say right now we're at a 50-50 in 2019. So reading this original piece by Halima from a decade ago, actually just a pinch over a decade, because she wrote this in January of 2009. I think enough of the conversation is moved for the black women with eyes to see and the ears to hear. But beyond that, most black women they're kind of a lost cause. I wince a little bit too much. I get a little bit embarrassed, but like at least I think what it took a decade in this, we're still filtering through these thoughts that like someone like Halima wrote a decade ago. But at least now by the present day, 2019, there's enough of us who are like, okay, we get it. We went through I think enough of us is all this kind of, you know, the kind of like maybe the stuff that's been more centered around Kendall and Simone and Crystalline and a lot of these kind of like, these personalities and these people who've been at it for varying amounts of time. Because again, especially someone like Kendall, she did a lot of her work and a lot of her discussions underground with like, black women privately, and only within the past year or two or so, it became more of these public things on YouTube and Facebook. And she has a podcast now, at least called the Blue Goddess Podcast. Uh, so at least in so it took a decade for these ideas to kind of start bubbling up to maybe more towards a quarter of us. But at least in a shorter period of time, about anywhere from like 2 to 3 years recently, we at least haven't been able to call into question. So I think maybe originally I had a lot more to say, it's the black man, it's just this, it's this, it's that. But when you start turning the mirror and looking at black women and even looking at yourself, even I can maybe talk about this in another video at some point, even things I had to ask myself about my own contribution, even though like I'm not anybody's mother. So I can't, so like, but in a way I had to hear that again, just because you don't have black children, black male children by proxy, when you look at yourself in a part of a larger racial grouping of people and try to maybe pull some of your own accountability for it. I'm getting a little bit too esoteric, general, spiritual about that, but anyway. So just gonna scroll down a pinch more. Go to Black Wall Street. To the whites or blacks, the rich Anglos for that one. Oh, every time I Rosewood and Black Wall Street. I mean, it's funny. Most of what I know about Rosewood is from the movie. Who was in that? Was Ving Rhames and John Voight were both in that one. I think I watched it on cable like when I was like 10. The Black Wall. I might have saved that for another one. I'm just gonna let you guys kind of chat and talk too. Yeah, John. People think Garvey was cool in his idealism, but the problem with that is kind of like what I referenced in the in Halima's piece, is that when we talk about these black men and have these great idealistic ideas, especially to whites, more in these scenes where black whites or blacks or any other racial group leaving their people being, forefronts and thinkers and what have you. That's all great and good, but when it trickles down to the black women and even children, people within the community group, within the inner group, if you know that his preference is more for lighter light, bright, damn near white women, then what do black women within this broader racial group do when basically that only that for the most part just suggests that we're just there to what's like clean toilets. We're not being the ones prized to be the wives or to be the women who are exalted as the center of the race. We don't, so the Garvey could be as smart and idealistic as he wants to be, but when it comes to me within this broader racial group as a black woman, particularly an unambiguously black, phenotypically black, fully black woman, it becomes problematic no matter how idealistic or smart these people are. And the biggest thing with Garvey and a lot of these older black thinker guys and these, so-called, pro-black, back to Africa men over the past, 50, 200 years, none of this has amounted to anything. And especially now by 2019, we're out of any of these kind of like, we're down to like just the average, these kind of how do you go from, we're a group of people who went from like Garveys, these idealized Garveys and Malcolms and Martin Luther Kings to like Umar Johnson and Tariq Nasheeds and like, it's like there's really no, you almost have to laugh now at this point because that's what we've like gone to. That's where we are now. Let me just, I'm at the bottom, I swear. Uh, all right, so you guys just kind of talk amongst yourselves. Cool, and that's awesome. I like seeing discussion and people hanging and talking and chilling. It's kind of interesting always to be on this end of like, doing the talking and the presenting and the what have you. So, all right, I'll try to just jump back over here and there a little bit more. So I just wanted to kind of get my main thrust. And so let's move from the past to the present. So I guess I should start screen sharing again now, shouldn't I? Okay, so I love Breanna Nouveaux. I think there's a great amount of people who make really great posts that I like, and they say things I think are really cool, and they really kind of stir conversation. And there's something about just how her approach to a lot of these discussions are. And so going from the past, from Halima to this, which was posted since yesterday on the 8th. Well, not yesterday. Well, it's 12:03, so the day before yesterday, if you will. Let me screen share. Because I was just like, I was blown away because she referenced actually Kindle and something I hadn't seen that I'd actually missed, and I was just like, whoosh, child. I just sat there for a second and I was like, and usually like a lot of times like I read thought provoking things and I just kind of let myself just kind of move with it and go with it. But this one I tried to stab at it because I knew I was going to answer this question. It was that riveting to me. So this is the original post. As you can see here, it's a clip from, it's an image linking to an article. The Met Gala was just a few days ago, and that's Miley Cyrus on the carpet. And as you know, I'm hoping I don't end up with some troubles later. But let me see. This is that song she did. This is a Miley Cyrus. Is it called 23? Is that the one? I think it is. Yep. Man, this probably is like so damn tagged. Especially after, like, what was it? This happened on Auto Stream, like as him and James were talking. It was like they were talking about a certain subject and then like you got the red alert because they have all this kind of like rigged up now. So I'm like, do I really want to do it? And lose my stream? Well, this is enough of it. God damn it. Let's do it. We'll just jump around. So this is her a few years ago. This is like the sub to the video. It's kind of gay. Whatever. Ooh, I got an idea. We'll turn the sound off. Do you need to hear this gutter rap fusion anyway? So just kind of look at the video. Black guy, his beats thing. They're in school. It's cool. They're smoking cigarettes in the smoking in the boys' room. Oh yeah. Shoes on the desk, tongue out of the mouth, winking. You know, I'll intermittently do this. So we'll just move through this bit. So this is Miley a few years ago when she was in her like rap, hip hoppy, thuggy girl, whatever thing. And I guess so much has become so commercialized from like even the '90s, like when things were a little bit more like, I mean, the hoodification of things has become so like commercialized. But anyway, I'm keeping it partially muted because I just want to give you a taste of this. You can all go find this later. Mike Will feature Miley Cyrus, Wiz Khalifa, Juicy J, 23. So, yep. All right. So let's just give you a taste. This actually kind of feeds into what Breanna's going to say here. So again, here's a little bit more. We gyrating. Yep. Negroes over there pouring lean in a coffee cup. All right. I think everybody got enough taste. So you can go find it yourselves later, people. I promise. All right. So can you talk about, I'm actually back at the chat real quick because I was moving over. Yes, video coming on the whole Meghan Markle birth and the whole Meghan Archie. Actually, yeah, I already. Meghan, Master Archie, and One Drop Rule Madness. I don't. Yeah, I need to think because it's tomorrow through Sunday. I don't know how my schedule's going to be, and I really want to kind of roll with it a bit more. So that is definitely coming because man, oh man, Twitter and every place else has been interesting. Then there was some BBC guy who just got fired today because of some like chimp reference thingy. So, cheese pizza beaker, that's definitely to come. So, hey Chris, how's it going? Is Christianity a serious solvent to Black unity in your opinion? No, because it's almost like the weirdest thing. I think without going off on too much of a side track here, it's almost like whites in a broader sense, across your greater, diaspora from Europe onwards and outwards need more of a cohesion with Black people across our diaspora. A lot of this kind of quote unquote cohesion is built on a lot of falsities. And I mean, the Black church since the beginning and through today is still filled with pedophilia, is filled with a lot of grifters, is filled with your preacher with his like Cadillacs and all his like his or her money. They're stealing. The Black church, especially in the American sense, we talk about no fathers in the home and welfare and all this stuff. The Black church has said, especially in America, from your little like corner store Rick Tackety churches in your average inner cities all the way up, they've said here at the seat of this decline. There's I don't the and this is even a little bit more fraught and more tense even in the white side of the discussion. I caught a good chunk of Norvin and what's his name, Billy Roper. I hope I'm not goofing that up. You should go over to Norvin Hobbs' channel and check out his discussion. Norvin is a very open pagan, and he talked with a Christian identity guy, and you know that's like a three-pronged debate in some of these white scenes, like the pagans versus the Catholics versus like the general Christians, and how that shapes up for white people. I mean, where even if you guys are finding like a hard way to figure out what religion for the race, or what lack of religion for the race, or where do we meet here in the middle? I mean, it's a similar discussion, but I don't think religion really. I don't know how much it has to do with Black people doing one thing or another, but Black unity, for myself personally, that's not a goal. And I don't, especially more in BWE circles, like the kind of watchword has been divest, especially for Black women in terms of seeing things and wanting to be Yeah, no, I don't see it as any kind of unity, but I, for one, and like lot of certain segment of Black women I tend to run with, we're not looking for Black unity. We're more focused on Black women specifically. A lot of the racial questions as a whole that I tend to raise here are kind of more of like a like a prelude to like where I see myself individually and Black women like myself going. So I talk about Black people in these kind of cohesive senses and discussions just to kind of draw a roadmap to here and to now as to why we, individuals like myself, need to divest from the greater Black whole and build maybe more, I don't want to say the voluntary communities of us with like-minded Black women particularly. And then from there, if there's like-minded Black men or, that you want to, whether romantically or just in a friendship way, whatever. So Black unity isn't my particular goal. I can talk about where I've seen it kind of rise and fall throughout everything up to this point. But anyway, yeah. Oh well, Black women, but that's just because there never really has been any Black unity. Because a little further in the chat, I think was that Cheese Pizza or was that John? I don't remember who just had said this. Where a lot of restrictions, particularly in America, whether it's your Jim Crow, your sundown laws, when those restrictions were in place, Black people had to collectively be together and to, live and date and marry and live amongst each other. But by the time you get to like a lot of the social and legal restrictions about intermarriage, about where Black people lived as, individually or in certain units, particularly if you look at stats where, Black men are more 3 times as likely to interracially date and marry than Black women are. Well, that tells you where this unity is only mostly just been a constraints placed on Black people to actually be together when given the option of free association. And I know especially when this moves over to like the white alt-right miscegenation discussions that kind of is a little bit of a shocker, but you can see it in the intermarriage rates, the lack of marriage amongst Black women and Black people together, exactly where a majority of Black people, particularly Black men, want to be. So we can't have Black unity if 3 times as many Black men compared to Black women since about the 1960s, post-Loving versus Virginia. If out of the whole pool of Black men, if when they do marry, 25% of them marry someone that's not Black, not a Black woman, well, that's just the beginning of where the problem is. And then if you go and add on your incarceration rates, you add on mortality rates and everything else outside that and then more recently, maybe within the past 20, 30 years or so, when you add in homosexuality and the down low question, you're taking more and more and more Black men already out of the pool. So you can't, and I guess kind of just even going back to the last piece that I was just reading here from Halima. Let me see, maybe I can just quickly find a way to kind of just answer your question that because she said something that I think really hits what you're asking me right now. Well, this paragraph here, Chris, I think she kind of the most immediate thing I can think of where she kind of hit on what you're asking me and how I would just kind of use her statement to kind of answer what you're saying. All right. I'll just read it again because this says this nice little chunk here. So this is directly for you, Chris. And also in the chat, I see, Ann and Chaz B98, you guys are both, Black women too. So you might be able to kind of like, follow up with like a kind of response to Chris's question as well. But I'm just going to restate Halima's paragraph here. In addition, the self-serving perspective in politics of Black men is plain to see. Me, serve me, cater to me. It's also through the roof at this point. Now, she wrote this a decade ago, and she's writing mostly for a Black woman audience that might already be clued into kind of what she's suggesting here. So, for instance, the Uplift Black Men, March for Us and Black Lives Matters rallies. When, for instance, there was a story that went viral because there were some Black men on the train, like an Amtrak, and this white woman had a bag in the seat. And somewhere in the interaction, the way he perceived it or how it shaped up, it was like she had her bag there because she didn't want a black man sitting next to her. And I think later it came out that maybe she was waiting for someone, and she just, I mean, like a lot of people on public trains, like Amtrak, you don't need to really go into a lot of explanation, especially if it's not crowded, the conductor's not asking you to move things. You just kind of move along. And he wrote some Facebook post, and black women with their capes came from everywhere across the internet to like call this white Becky racist and how dare you do that to a brother, blah, 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 blah. But then on the other hand, you'll get black men write articles about, I like dating white women because we can go swimming together. They got better credit. Or like Kevin Hart's famous, dark skinned black women take a punch better than other women. All that kind of isms. I wish she could have maybe added a little more context there. But when I read this the first time, I was thinking about fleshing that out. But anyway, I just figured I'd flesh it out in the second read. So back to Halima. This is directly opposed to the level of self-sacrifice that will clearly and undeniably be required from them for any such Black nation building. As I mentioned in the last post, you only need to look at the fact that Black men are displaying all the wrong priorities in terms of Black nation building. They have a well-known and documented problem with Black female achievers as a clear example. Yet these are the women Black men should be queuing around the block for if Black advancement was strongly on their mind. I want to get through this to the end before without adding this, but I think I'm trying to get into her the black female, the achievers part portion is, you keep hearing this argument, black women won't, they just think their degrees will keep them warm at night. So more often than not, there's been this refrain about, well, you're a more educated black woman, you make more money than a black man, like you making 100K a year, you should like date marry a black guy who like makes maybe 30K. You have like maybe a bachelor's degree, but he barely has a GED, high school diploma or GED. Maybe later on after a marriage or something, or a long cohabitation, he'll go back and get a bachelor's degree in something. And usually the disdain is kind of put on black women for overachieving. But I'll just say this: in the 60s, a lot of Great Society provisions opened up. You think about your affirmative actions and all these other things that opened up for black people. It wasn't white men, in 1969 or early 70s walking around and just handing out coupons to black women to go to school. A lot of those provisions that that you see saw black women, take it, and even a little bit more later too, more towards the 90s and beyond, going to get that CNA degree or nursing degree, going to get some type of like, master's in education or some type of like kind of maybe more city municipal type of administration. You saw black women going to do those things. And I love that whole thing about the government jobs, and they just go black women on these government jobs. There's a lot of black men who work in government, like, a fair amount of the bus drivers growing up in bus drivers and other city workers that have been around black men. Nothing was stopping them from being achievers as well, especially when we look at the Great Society and all those provisions opened up for black people that was there to address, alleged like, historical grievances and things that black people were shoved out or pushed out of. Anyway, so when she mentioned the female achievers, a little bit more could be said there. I was just kind of adding that little extra bit that I think she might have been aiming at, but again. So just rounding out her paragraph here, and going back to Halima, yet these are the women black men should have been queuing around the block for if Black advancement was strongly on their mind. Consider this: if Black nationhood was a priority for Black men, do you think 70% of Black children would be born outside of wedlock with the attendant poverty and lack of safety these children are more likely to experience? I can assure you that men who know the central position Black children have in the racist future would do everything in their power to be with their kids, and complaints will mount to heaven if Black men try to deny Black men access. So the unity question is, I was answer that there in terms of black women. We don't, this is, as a lot of us now in the present can say, a lot of this whole divestment and not needing a black unity answer or answer to your question for black people really only applies to maybe at this point, at the very least, maybe a quarter of black women, maybe even less than that, or who are like me or like any other kind of black women in these circles. So for the greater general black population of women, this isn't on their radar. This isn't, maybe for better for worse, and that's a whole nother discussion. So So I'm not saying that this is going to be some broad movement or like, segment of Black women are making these choices, but for the kind of Black women who could see something like this written a decade ago, in addition to what we'll move over to here in a second, there's a quarter of us, I would say maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, who knows? Again, these are all still things in process. We don't need Black unity because there's never been Black unity. It's all kind of mostly been a facade. And the closer that we look, whether it was someone like Halima a decade ago or the discussions we're having now, it's pretty obvious that that's not coming to fruition. And instead of like moving like our mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers before us with like this wool over our eyes, we'll find the unity that we seek not based on race. I mean, you're Black. I'm a Black woman, and a fair amount of Black women who move in these kind of circles and are taking in this type of information. We'll be Black women till the day we die, or maybe as Sunshine puts it, we'll be glitter mermaids until we die. I love her. She's like, I can't stand Black women. Y'all's a mess. I don't want to be called Black woman. I don't be with class with y'all. I'm a glitter mermaid, and I kind of like that kind of edginess of what she says, because sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to be grouped in with the majority, the general pop, if you will, of Black women and their prison of their minds. I'm a glitter mermaid too, but anyway, so hopefully that kind of answers it a bit, and I'll let some of y'all kind of mix it up there in the chat. So I'll take one more quick look at the chat. So miscegenation, huge issue. Yeah. Are Black and I need to get the heck away from all these individuals. Yep. Highly dysfunctional. John Harris. Oh my God, thank you for saying that. Because that's the funniest thing. I've been actually. I have this little tentative list. Like I want to do like a video, like things I could want to tell the alt this and write about BWE, and I want a video addressed towards BWE chicks, that circle that says things you can learn about this and right, alt right. And that's one thing that you just said there that I really want to make very evident, because I made this point privately with a few people at this and right that I've chatted with, and I'm like, and I've said it probably in a few streams, like, I don't get the like backbiting about Black women. It's almost like in some of these pockets of like a lot of these white male distant alt right scenes, oh, Black women, oh, white women, Black men don't want them. They just want to date white women, and all the kind of laughing and the joke pointing and the kind of making fun of Black women. But when you look at Black women, what they've chosen to do to collect a sense about just being with Black men and loving their brothers, loving the race, there's this kind of maybe tradiness and race loyalty amongst Black women that a lot of men in this scene claim that they want from white women, and just from their own racial groups, whether it be some of the Jews who float around here, maybe some assorted Asians, or maybe even a Hispanic or two that kind of float here in those ideas. And you would think that they would actually be like kind of maybe praising Black women for that. And again, like everything doesn't translate to who you want to bang. You don't have to want to bang Black women, and that's just fine. Especially if you look at the numbers, the majority of Black women want to date, marry, produce children with Black men. However that shapes up or out for them. So it's funny that the Black women are actually, if you look on paper and at their choice, is more ethnocentric than Black men are. And I would think that would be something that your average alt-right dissident writer would like, kind of like at least notice. But it seems like more often than not, they're trying to like parrot Black male talking points. But it's almost like if this dude wanted to bang my girlfriend, and there's this other chick that he knows that, because of race or because of interest, that he'd be better suited for, why would I uplift the dude trying to bang the chick that I want to bang instead of trying to like push him off back with that chick over there? It's almost like one other example I would call some of the back-asswardness of like a lot of these kind of white male-centered white nationalist scenes, where like it's another form of shooting yourself in the foot that I just never really kind of understood. Because on paper, yeah, Black women are more ethnocentric, and it's kind of like some of the traits that you see these guys say they want from white women. You at least think out of a sign of like respect or politeness, they would kind of like maybe do at least a quiet hat tip towards Black women in the collective sense, because they are doing the things that they say they want their women to do. But I digress, because that's something I definitely like want to hone in on. Raise your children first. They raise the girls to be men, the boys to be girls. Yeah, Chaz B98, man. You know, because actually, Steve Saylor had some other thread once. It's like maybe a few months ago, and I jumped in on this. Actually, I think I got a like from him. Just he's like, oh, that's interesting or whatever. I was like, yeah, I see it's in my own family, and a lot of families like you know the girls are start washing dishes and stuff. I mean, I wanted to because I was like, I want to wash dishes. I'm an only child, and for reasons I'll make for another video. I'm very grateful for that. But my cousin, you know, she has two older brothers. They both, you know, one still lives at home. He's almost in his 50s. The other one moved out a bit, but he, you know, has fallen some not so good ends, you know, but she's the one with like, you know, her 2, 3 umpteen degrees, you know, to a degree, kind of a high horse and heifer, if you will. And, you know, she's the one that's the pro black. I remember when she got all pro black in the 90s she's like about a decade older than me. And she's the one carrying the race. You know, she stopped wearing a hair relaxer because that was white supremacy. She stopped eating pork and, you know, red, black, and green, all that jazz. And it's so funny, like the black girls are kind of raised to be the ones they have to get a job. Oh, because I think that was a tweet I left to Steve Saylor in that thread he had. I was like, well, because the funny thing is, like, black women and girls have to get all these degrees and find something to do with themselves because the stats and the numbers are staring right at you. They're not, you know, they're not like white and Asian women or Jewish women going to college to get their MRS degree. You know, usually when you see black women at school and going to colleges, half the time they're hanging out amongst themselves. There's like 2 or 3 black guys and like 10 gajillion black girls. I was another tangent I'll say for another time. But anyway, great thoughts there, folks. I'm gonna move over to this piece, the present day piece, because this is so cool. So I was showing you guys that Miley Cyrus clip before I went back into the chat because I just wanted to give you kind of some perspective here because you know that was hers a few years ago doing her thing. You know, she was Miss Rapper girl kicking it with the brothers. You know, what was she wearing wolf braids with my feet on the couch like it's my house. Lord. Anyway, so this is a Breanna Nouveaux post. Love her, love her, love her. She has so many gems. One of my favorite like black women on Facebook. Like every time she posts something, I stop and I go look at it. Even just the littlest things she links. So this one is, well, this is the post. Then she leaves a comment below that I try to respond to very clumsily. But anyway, let me take a sip and clear my throat. If ever a case for the importance of in following through on imagery and its long-standing lasting effects. A few years ago, Cyrus was a hot global mess. Now, this 26-year-old is a married woman to one of the hottest talents in the world, while the Lupita Nyong'os and Denai Giraris of the world are 35, 40, and single. I just find it all very interesting to be over-sexualized in imagery, underutilized in love. Part of that is the fact that whites, particularly the mothers, set up redeeming factions for their daughters, so the Cyruses of the world can fall as far as they want to. They will always be caught. Excuse me. So I already closed the window, but if anybody's here, you can go back and. Uh, uh, Everybody knows what Miley Cyrus was doing a few years ago. She was Miss Rap Queen Broad or what have you, you know, rolling around with the brothers, doing her like gangster rappy moment, you know, licking her tongue out, kind of twerking her bony ass all over the place, all that business. So, but here she is 2019 with, you know, she's married to Liam Hemsworth, which I found very surprising. I could have seen her maybe picking up some white actor guy that kind of was, a known name, a known quantity, but like, you know, after her like, you know, whole kind of roll around in like, you know, the hood, you know, that kind of deal, it just seemed like someone as high profile as him, you know, I could see her maybe picking up some like, you know, some like kind of semi-known but not really known under the radar quantity. But anyway, so that was just in one paragraph. So she kind of opens this up, and then we get down to the chat, and there's a lot of comments here. Now, so the key point that she starts with that she's trying to make is you can be a Miley Cyrus and you can do all the running around, be hood, and like she said, redeeming factions that, you know, whites, and, I guess you can extend this to Asians and Jews for the most part, even though maybe those two groups, especially now socially and culturally, are less likely to do that kind of running around and that kind of rolling around in the mud, if you will, and that maybe white women have been known to kind of do maybe the past few years. But yeah, so this woman's 26. She did, her little run around. But we have like Lapita. I wish Twitter was easier on the desktop. I know some things I can't do the way I want to do them. But everybody knows who Lupita Nyong'o is. 12 Years a Slave, uh, Black Panther. God damn it. Fine. Black Panther. Oh, I want to see. You know what? Actually, it's not her and the same girl, but um, it's not the same one from the movie. But the picture is so cool. Let's do Met Gala. Because I see this earlier today and I was like, oh, okay, there's so many. Where's the one with her and old girl today? Dance. No, Met Gala. Let's try 2019. Wait, no, it's her and Janelle. That's her and Janelle. I really wanted the other one, but anyway. Just give me a check on what's the name again. Deny. Okay. I know, it's like, why are you using Yahoo search? Because it's like here, and I keep needing to reset this damn thing, but I never get it reset. Now later on, another black woman in the comments in this Facebook post says, well, part of it is, she's like, well, some of it might just be the short hair thing, and to a certain degree, I could say that's a part. That could be a part of it too. Definitely don't want to wait until the black women and hair discussion. That's a, and sisters in the chat, and girl, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thingy thing, and I don't have time for it right now. I'm just trying to find one of them. So this is who she's referencing. Lupita and, am I saying that right? Lupita and Deny. I was gonna get her last name goofed up, but anyway. So, how do I want to approach this? So, they're in their mid-30s, and, Lupita, 12 Years a Slave, that was like already 8 years ago when that came out. So basically, in so many words, she's saying things don't move. And I was trying to say this when I read this post. So all in all, she's making this point that you can be mostly a I don't know, middle age, like a mid 20-something white woman. You can go run around, start from your like little wholesome country thing, then move over to this, move over to that. But black women like Lupita and I, who are in Hollywood, and I think she says it enough succinctly. I don't need to try to keep like rolling back and trying to re-answer her, restate what she just said. You read it. I can reread it again if you want me to, but I don't think I need to. But if you want me to, that's totally cool. So later on, so this is where I was just reading through the comments, and not like Breanna, she tries to hone in on specific points. And sometimes I feel like too many of these black women's discussions, like we kind of like get a little mealy mouth and we roll around in circles, but she's really good at trying to get people to like pull out specifics. So she just restated the fact that these women are all unmarried and over 30. And it just kind of rolls for a bit. So you see the next comment, right? Same unclaimed situationships for our A-list women is random boom Quisha from the block. And I was like, well, and I like that. I was like, yeah. So so when we talk about the black underclass and black women and welfare, no fathers in the home, when you look at like even at your A-list, celebrity types, I don't think either of them have children, but you see the same unmarried. So you could be boom chic with on the corner in the hood, and you'd be all into A-list celebrities, the same type of dating and marriage or lack thereof patterns persist. There's something else going on here. But again, since so much of the discussions, whether it's amongst blacks and then more the like more, kind of race realists, dissident right probing people probing into the black people, it always goes back to, well, the fathers are in the home and welfare checks and it's like, no, there's something else going on here, because you see this across the map. And I get to this a little bit later when I try to say, but this is the comment. And I just stopped because I was like, whoa, because she mentioned something I guess she said Kendall has said that I hadn't come across. So I'll just highlight it just so everybody zooms in, you know exactly where I'm reading from. Because man, it's just kind of like, can we do we can do a control plus up in here? All right. So just in case you're looking at it in, oh God, Lord, let's make that big. All right. It takes us 10 to 15 or even 20 years longer to sustain what other women get. Why? And why aren't Black women actively working to fix that? The solution isn't swirl. Dick is and has always been abundant. But just like KSC mentioned, how were the Kardashians able to do in 10 years with the exact same color dick what we couldn't do in 10 centuries? The problem is and always was interior. Becky didn't shy away from what made men desire her, Armenian Becky included. Meanwhile, Black women have 16-page articles every other week about so-called fetishization, which doesn't match the out of wedlock rate and highly aggressive sexual imagery. It does not match. But single we remain well into our 30s, 40s, and 50s. Why? And I was just like, whoa, like I didn't even, I missed that somewhere. I wonder if that was in maybe, I mean, it could be anywhere because Kindle kind of rolls in a couple of different places, but that's what just kind of like blew me away. How are the Kardashians able to do in 10 years with the exact same color dick that we couldn't do in 10 centuries? Now, Chloe's not married to she was with Lamar Odom and then the other dude. Neither of them she's married to. She is out of wedlock child with the second one. But Kim, I think she was knocked up with Northwest before they were married. They were married before the second baby came. And the other sister of the Kardashians said she's with the white guy, but all three of those kids, I believe, are out of wedlock. They've never been married. They've just been these kind of casual, whatever people the entire time. But then I believe, was it Kylie or Chloe? Kylie, that's the one with the baby by the rapper guy. So I guess I tried to take a stab at it. And I was just like, oh man, and I got a little bit like, I guess I could just pull it back up. What was I trying to say? Because I was like, let me make a video about this, and I use this as the second piece. I can try to find something to say. Wow, seriously, that's the $1 million question. I want to try to take a mini stab at this. Black women don't have a life continuum that other races of women do. Be born, raised, turn 18, marriage and children by 35, stay married to the end of life, or divorce around 50s or 60s. This ends up looking differently across the diaspora, but among Black women, there aren't life markers for us to move through or along. I was hoping somebody would reply, but nobody replied. But I guess, what she said kind of stood on its own. And I think it was just maybe more for me to like try to flesh out here a little bit. What else did I say? I think Gen X's and beyond. Generation X women. So this would be mostly Black women who, I guess in their 40s, may approaching their early 50s. I think these will be different for them as you move a little bit further along. But I guess here, which I didn't really go too far into, what I was trying to suggest is, as I kind of maybe mentioned previously in the video, was different for like the Black boomer generation, like where my mother, and for some of you, it's probably your grandmothers. My parents are a little bit older when they had me. These children and grandchildren, the sharecropper types, like just one step removed from like the South, from the Great Migration. I think being in the not that there were no Black people ever in the North or beyond the South, but when we think about the sizable population numbers of us today, most of us can kind of trace ourselves back through that lineage. And for most of us getting up here, I think maybe before, I don't really know if I want to keep home. I tried to answer that. I think maybe me and my rambling here, which you can, if any of you are looking, you can kind of read through it later. Actually, that plus is really good. I'm starting to notice I may need glasses in the next few years. So let's just go back. Let's just pick this apart because I think she says it best. This kind of blew my mind. And I think maybe just for the sake of this, I should just kind of start winding down and go back to chat again in a second. But I just I'll just pick her piece part sentence by sentence. Why did it take us longer to get what the women get? Why, and why are we working actively to fix that? So that actually kind of rolls us back into what Halima was saying a decade ago. It's this kind of wishful thinking amongst Black women. You're even seeing this with this whole Georgia abortion thing, and there's all this like hand wringing and like, oh my God, Black women get more abortions than anyone. This is really going to affect us, guys. It's the handmaiden's tale. And just like Sunshine, if anybody, I should let me. I've referenced a few people here that I should drop in the chat. Um, hmm, I can't spell. I'm gonna drop Unbothered Hoe Academy here because she had a video about this on her channel today. I'm not gonna go do a lot of link searching right now. Why is it not autocorrecting? No, because un and bothered are like two words actually. My bad. So she made a really great video about this today. She's like, I'm like a sex worker. I'm like a faux sex chick. And I don't understand where you women are like freaking out about this. You're not, what did she say that was the best part about this? So this whole, we're all freaking out about the abortion thing and it's going to disproportionately affect Black women. But then and then Lavera's like, well, white women, Asian women, Jewish women, and all those other races of women, they manage to like be sexually active without ending up clocking in these type of numbers that we're tending to fill out in the, as far as abortion numbers, and it's not really worth all the they you don't see them in any sizable group. Like it's like it's one thing you won't ever hear a man bragging that he had a 2-inch penis. He had a 10-inch penis. You won't never stop hearing about it. But you see, I know that's a kind of crude parallel I'm trying to draw here, but that's kind of what I'm kind of getting at. You don't need to go tell everybody that you get more, like this is going to disproportionately affect us more. But I mean, this isn't like 1850. We have the latex condom, we have birth control, we have these things. It's always just funny what kind of gets certain women's like interest peaked and to complain about or to say that it's going to disproportionately affect them. So just like we're not actively trying to fix that, as Halima said previously, we're not trying to fix this daydreaming and this like faux nation building. If you're going to build a nation, how much does it cost? We need wood, we need nails, we need some soil, we need some fertilizer, we need these things. Just kind of twiddling your thumbs leads to situations like this that she's alluding to here, where you're not getting married. It's taking you longer to marry than every other group. Why aren't you asking questions about that? And so then the Kardashians, and I usually call them the Kardashians, preferably. They've done in 10 years, and especially, anyone listening that's like, oh, the race mixing, the white women, Black men. The funny things I will say is I was a little bit taken aback with, and this has happened in quite a different few circles, when the whole Kanye Trump thing started, and you had all these guys, these alt-right, dissident right types. Oh yeah, Kanye, I know. So there's half of the camp who was like, this is like some PragerU level like cuckery. Let's stop. This whole R. the Donald based Black guy in a Trump hat. You know, cuckery here. But then there were a few another, and there's a few people I was a little, let's say I was a little taken aback by, that were uplifting this as some type of thing when that whole family sits here as a, Kanye plus the Kardashians as a part of this thing. But so say what you will about it, about him individually or him as a part of this family. They've done this in 10 years. They've created fashion empires. They stayed, well, I know that I heard the ratings are down. They've stayed on the tip of everybody's tongue. They've, produced children. They produce a solid amount of wealth and popularity, and little cottage industries based around them as individual women, the little Kim camp, the Chloe camp, the Kylie camp, and this sort of, Black men, Black dick that they've kind of like, married, dated, slept with, produced children with, been photographed with. How in 10 years these people that we only know, because Kim Kardashian was one of Paris Hilton's kind of like, local Hollywood buddy toadies, and then later a sex tape with Ray J. So from that, like what? Well, that was already over a decade ago, maybe close to 15 years ago. How did they go from that in a 15-year period to being like some of the most recognizable women on the face of the planet, and black women in the collective sense are sitting here, crying in their beer over whatever the hell's going on? It's a Georgia abortion bill. It's Donald Trump. It's some other, miasma of some sort that's like befalling them. But these Armenian Beckys and figured they didn't taken the same thing and figured it out in 10 years. I, I was just that all the trash that I've talked about them, and the literal just disgust I have for most of that family, just because it's all this kind of like hypersexualized crass culture that I just find really disgusting. Sexism can be amazing, beautiful. Sexuality can be amazing, beautiful. Women can be amazing, beautiful. Men are amazing and beautiful, but that family and that whole brand around them and this weird hypersexualization to this culture is just so disgusting and so basic and blah on so many levels. It's like it literally makes me want to throw up. But I have to give credit where credit is due. And then, yeah, I have to get and look around at black women like, well, how the hell did they figure out how to make this black dick work for them? And y'all still sitting here with every other kind of like social ill, physical ill, health ill, you know, whatever, whatever problem that's beating y'all about the head in this white supremacist society. How do these women figure it out? I don't understand. And it kind of makes you stop and go, huh? You don't have to like the Kardashians. You don't have to like, the whole white woman, black man, thing that they kind of spun into this business for themselves that's kind of reverberated out into the culture. But you do have to stop and ask yourself, especially if you're a black woman, how the hell they make this black dick work for them and y'all can't? How are you 70% out of wedlock births? How many of you are like, sitting here living hand to mouth in this country and these chicks done figured it out? I don't know. So that was like the kind of doozy of the past to the present, reading a post from a decade ago, and there's still the same type of like, scratching your head like when we're still not out of some of these things that she brought up here, because we're still talking about the stuff in the present day, looking at the Kardashian family a decade later, things like this that have elapsed in the time that this was written in January 2009 to a post that was written yesterday, or technically day before yesterday. So, uh, da, 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 da. Yeah, so I think that's all I really had to say. And then for the most part, you know, things have stayed the same, but they've changed. Um, I guess that's kind of all I think I had to say for now. I think I'll scan the chat and see if there's anything else to be said and let you know what's coming up next. And it's a little bit before 1 a.m. for me here in these parts in Chirac, suburban Chirac, that is, where everything's quiet, quiet and white, except for me. Heyo, I'm so lame. That's okay. All right, so where we at? Where we at? Still, I like didn't want to miss anybody. I think I have to be a little bit better. I'm gonna go back and forth. Um, because I didn't expect so many people to be talking and chat. But most of you guys are kind of doing a thing amongst yourself, so I'll just kind of let that stand. Basically, rich white liberals, human biodiversity, baby. Hmm. Well, Chris, but that's it's the I think I said this earlier. That's the it's the in what's the problem is. Well, I think I said that before. Maybe I have to kind of partially walk that back. It's like whites need to come together more, and black people need to come apart. Because a lot of this community or anything unifying black people has already just been kind of a facade. I said this in numerous places, in numerous chats, and in these circles. Like a lot of it is black people pretend that they really unified. A lot of this is just things to beat Whitey about the head with, and to just say we're the blacks and we're blackity black and we need this from you, white man. So a lot of this unity it's always just been a facade just to like shame whites and to like get them to like say, here's some more affirmative action, here's some more, great society benefits, here's some more of me, beating myself with a cat o' nine tails about my white privilege or what have you. Because I didn't say identitarianism because I think that's more. No, I mean dysfunctional. See, it's a lot of dysfunctional tribalism. I think Cheese Pizza has said this a little further up in the chat. Black people are very dysfunctional in just amongst themselves, and you see this with like Pookie and Ray Ray and Boom Shikwa in the hood, all the way up to like your like Obama level middle class, upper middle class type black people. There's never been an if you look at the whole history of like blacks in the West, blacks in the diaspora, our year zero out of like sub-Saharan Africa for most of us is a continuing process of us going into the Middle East via that slave trade that existed and persisted for quite long time before whites even showed up on the scene. And before, the transatlantic slave trade even began, we don't have it's we don't really have an identity that's not, especially in any kind of like modern relatable terms, because so much of our prehistory, early history isn't written down. There's no kind of through line narrative for us to draw before we ever met y'all and met the Arabs. So it's not dysfunctional necessarily because if what we have now under this so-called black unity or we is all one black race, I mean, but again, yeah, but I would say that's something that maybe you could say to like black men, whether it's like your MGTOW black men or these certain segments of black men, that you see. I mean, if they're the ones already swirling out at 3 times the rates of black women for the past 50 years, maybe you should tell them to like, get in group community in order because the black women are here. They're there. You see Boom Shikwa with a baby on her hip in the hood. Same way you see, some middle class black woman, she's like a mid level, white collar, you know, working in a city job or a private sector job. She's got like 1 or 2 kids. She was hitting her late 20s or 30s. Maybe she had one at 18 when got her, whatever degree. She, didn't want to waste time or run the clock, so she took up with a guy to have a baby or two. I mean, the black women are there. They're making babies. You look at the 70% out of wedlock birth rates, but it only does. I've said this again. I told someone who said they had no idea white in the scene. They were like, I had never thought of it this way. A lot of this single motherhood just means that they're unmarried. Sometimes they're cohabitating. Sometimes, he shows up to buy Christmas presents, or, the kids spend a week or two with him. Like even Trayvon Martin's a perfect example of that. His parents were married at some point. They split up. When he got killed, he was with at his father's like girlfriend's like townhouse association. That's where Zimmerman lived, and that's where Trayvon's father's girlfriend lived. So when we talk about the single unmarried, I mean, there is the black women are there, and they're doing what they want to do. Like, I mean, they just don't need. There's no in group. There's never been an in group community to use shame tactics. I mean, you got. I mean, have you seen a World Star hip hop video? I mean, do you think a race of people is ever going to come back from something like that? I mean, if there's shame, there are some shame tactics you wouldn't even have like the past 30 years of what became some of the most crass and like absolutely nasty thug rap, sex, trap, hip hop culture, the worser aspects of it. So, I mean, it's like telling somebody with like, pancreatic cancer to take an aspirin at this point. I get where you're coming from, and I'm not like, I don't think, especially a lot of whites to see, don't really understand just how bad this is. And it'd almost be better to like, do you want to die because you have gangrene, or do you want to get rid of take off a hand over here, maybe, take off a leg just right below the knee over there and have some semblance of moving forward. I mean, I don't know. I just don't. I mean, and then also too a separation for a few generations into some of the better people could mean that maybe 50 years, maybe 100 years, when I'm not even here, you'll have some of the what's left, some of the remnants of Black people in the racial group who are left that can come back together and maybe do something really cool amongst themselves. But there's just way too much damage at this point. The Kardashians are abominations on the human race species. Yeah, yeah, but after reading that post, I had to say, man, she got a good point though, especially in relation to Black women, relation to Black women specifically in regards to that. They've made a living being these like tardy, thotty, Armenian, sex symbols, posting damn near half naked photos, big booties, lip fillers, and but all those things that, and this is not to say all Black women. I mean, all Black women are, and I'm not trying to box all Black women in some physical category because I don't think that's right. But or like all the big hips and booties and lips. Yeah, it exists into some. I mean, not every Black woman is like well endowed. Not every Black woman has a big ass. Not every Black woman is like curvy or thick with full lips. So obviously I'm just throwing that caveat out there because I feel like I should, but basically the features that the Kardashians have chosen to embellish and to make kind of the center of most of their look are things that I would say like 7 out of 10, most people would kind of associate or maybe attribute towards Black women. They made this work for them. So Bob and it's almost like we say you hate the player, hate the game. You can like not like someone's thing, but you have to kind of like go, man, what are they doing wrong or right that we haven't seemed to figure out. Uh, yeah. Blacks don't practice shame tags, they embrace dysfunction or are either too scared or too uncomfortable to mention it or really just don't care about it. Yeah. The dad really turned into a woman. Oh my goodness. It's funny how that was a part of that last little trail when they were really trying to push the transgender thing hard. There was that show with the dad from Arrested Development played the patriarch turned matriarch. Was it transparent? Get it, transparent. And I think that Bruce Jenner thing was like kind of like the end game of that, or like there were all these examples you could tell that it was just some like thing that they were really trying to like push out there, yeah. And then the one brother Rob, he's like this overweight kid, and he married the rapper. No, she wasn't a rapper. She was a girl dated the rapper that the other sister took up with. Um. Anyway, yeah. I wonder what we'll say, in the history books later about the Kardashians. It's just, I guess, Clown World 2.0, Clown World, acceleration mode. Yeah, so I guess that's all I had to say for the first installment here. I think, what did I learn? What did I learn? I think the Facebook post, I guess I ended up just tying into something that I just had recently talked about. But maybe next time I'll find I did find some other blog that I wanted to pull up. It's like some like black chicks Tumblr, um, Clown Dynasty. Yep, more like Clown Dynasty. Yeah. um. Yeah. So I mean, seriously, I'm kind of getting my feet wet and back into things. So I can see a lot more regularity here in terms of streaming and a lot more just regularity. I'm really annoyed, like especially of course in the time frame that I fall off is when they change that damn uh YouTube. You can't stream on your phone unless you have 1,000 people. But in a certain way, I think that in a way for me personally, in terms of everything, that's kind of cool because then it kind of puts me in a situation where I have to like sit down and make sure I make a point to do a thing and talk about stuff. Um But I like the idea of just jumping on and like maybe like kind of do a little hype and like, yo, 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 come look at the channel later around 10 o'clock. And I'm gonna be talking about this and that, yo. So I can't do that with the phone like I used to, but that's cool. So what's next? I'll just let you look at my like. I just preloaded this. I was starting to type some things out, and so next video, well, I might do something in the middle, maybe. Cause I don't want to I don't want to, because I said I have my feet usually in two ponds. A lot of Black women center stuff, a lot of post alt right, dissident right stuff, and I want to work harder in this incarnation of the channel, and maybe actually have a second channel, which I'm gonna start. I think I'm gonna do is I want to start reading short stories, and I also want to cook. I was actually telling James about this because I was like, "Oh man, he made some what did he make?" I'm gonna say this wrong. I'm gonna feel bad. It's like a Greek word, and I feel like I'm being racist if I don't say it right. Stop screen sharing so I can go to the dictionary. Musaka? Musaka. Yeah, and I was like, "Oh man, bro, I gotta start doing my like, as like we call this dining with the dissidents." Like, we gotta start cooking and doing some other stuff and everything, And I found a camera. My buddy, they like use it to shoot their like kids' first bath or something 5 years ago. And she loaned it to me to take to London last year, and I was unpacking some stuff like a week ago, and I was like, "No way, it's a camera." So a lot of things I want to do, but I guess at this point I just want to mix it up. How about this? Before I go, which I'm going to do probably in the next few minutes, John, Cheese Pizza, Chris, since, there's some familiar faces and some of the last faces I see here commenting, can you give me a potential more post-alt-right, dissident right subject to talk about? Nothing too heavy or too like long tempered. Like for instance, I'm wondering if I can't do the Megan Archie one drop rule kind of deep dive, especially all the Twitter stuff I've been kind of like chatting about the past few days. I might have to put that one off a little bit. Uh, Something I can kind of maybe visit. I just want to make sure I'm like mixing up the content. I don't want to just. I think that's one thing I would say before that I did a little bit more like more Black women BWE center stuff, which I'm fine with and I like, but I want like more of a mix because I interact with like different people and everything. So I feel like I like to cover something more along those lines. I could talk about a certain channel or a certain person. Part of me's like, well, why don't you do like a roundup of some of your favorite like, post alt right, dissident right thinkers or blogs, or maybe just do like a little top 10. Like if you were to ask me personally as a non-white, like who do you like listen to or read particularly? I don't know. Give me something if you feel like it. I got like I think I'm gonna stay on for another minute or two. Give me something to work with, guys. You throw it out there, I'll make a note, and maybe that's something I can do at least in the interim or set something up for the next few days so I can make sure I'm mixing it up over here. I'm going to mute myself and finish my beer and just see if you guys think of anything you can maybe leave me with. And before I do, I was doing this for a while before I bring this back. Tonight's brew is New Belgium Dayblazer Easygoing Ale, brewed and canned by New Belgium Brewing, Fort Collins, Colorado, and Asheville, North Carolina. 12 fluid ounces, and it is 4.8% by volume. Nice, easy drinking ale. Very sessionable, super session beer. I haven't really had a lot of New Belgium in the past few years. I mean, Fat Tire. I remember when I was like just starting college, and he's hanging out with these older kids in like this group that I was in, and I remember like it was this big deal because you could only still buy it in Colorado at the time. So he'd come back with like all these like cases of like Fat Tire, man. It's this beer you can only get in Colorado, and and obviously here you are in 2019. They make a lot of stuff now, but that's obviously their flagship, most famous beer. Speaking of, I might get some New Glarus this weekend when I'm in Wisconsin. which is like nothing, in the Chicagoland area. It's like I bet less than like 45 minutes I can be in Wisconsin, just across the border, maybe a little less than that. So I could probably get New Glarus anytime I want, but they're one of the holdout breweries like that. I guess people who know them over the years, they just don't want the headache. Once you start selling alcohol across any state lines, moving to the intrastate commerce. Let me make sure I got my prefix right. I hope I did that right. Intra-state commerce is across state lines. Interstate commerce is within the borders of a state, like county to county, region to region. Yes. Well, if I'm not right, someone will correct me anyway. So, all right. Yeah, sure, Cheese Pizza, ask away. And I'll answer Chris's question while you type. Do you think America will have segregated public schools again in the future? You know what? They probably will, but it won't look the way. I mean, I haven't looked too much into this. There was the school shooting with the I guess the trans lefty kids, and you're getting the whole, white people's oppressive, you know, furry, other kin, gender neutral bathrooms, blah blah blah. It'll come back. It won't maybe look the way we think it's going to look, but oh yeah, it'll definitely make a comeback. Even if we just separate by genders again, too, I've seen more enough cases for that to happen. But then, yeah, segregation, yeah, but it'll look so many different ways. Like how Yang is kind of making the forefront of his campaign, like the whole, um, AI is going to make everything look different. When there's some comic strip that they were sharing around his campaign, like some kind of stereotypical white guy with a lunch pail and a flannel shirt sitting there. I don't know the bubbles. Like I don't want no illegal immigrant who can't speak English taking my job. And then he's sitting next to like a robot eating his lunch, and the robot bubble just says it won't, or something to that effect. So, I don't know how big this still is, or if it was ever big. I know there was a push, and you have seen these commercials in Wisconsin where it's like, oh, you can just have your kid go to school online at home for like, I don't know if it was K through 12. I think it was more like eighth grade through 12 or 9 through 12 have been kind of facilitated online. So yeah, there'll be segregated schools again, and then with the AI, mechanical, offshore, offsite, capabilities of tech, yeah, there'll be segregated schools across the map. It'll look a little different than what we saw in Brown versus the pre or blah. It'll look different than just saying, black kids over there, white kids over there, but it'll definitely be making a comeback in one way or another. Plot thickens. My little BWE circle. Did I? Oh, good. Oh, Lord, I forgot to unmute again. Those rookie mistakes, man. Yeah, so I'm just going to start closing a few of these little other tabs down. I have to go back and read that later. So, do you, God forbid, hmm. Do I want to look at Drudge for a second? I was looking at this earlier, and I was like, oh, Lordy. I didn't get a chance. I was having dinner, and I need to follow up on this. Um, It's like I want to call him Tiny Jim Comey, almost like there's that old joke like what was his name? The guy was in all those Friday movies, a big criminal dude, Debo or whatever. He was like, they called him, like the big like criminal, like swole 6 foot guy. You call him like Tiny, and since Tiny rhymes with Comey, and then it's kind of ironic because he's like 6'7". I was gonna call him Tiny James Comey. What a dumbass! Like seriously. Um, yeah. So they seized a boat today. That's insane to me. I I clicked on it earlier. There's another It movie coming out. More tigers now in cages than in wild. That sucks. So he fired off a. Is that? They probably just like Andrew is known for his like fake things or his fake like doctor pictures. I was like, is he really flipping us off? That's gonna be interesting. That was his Trump's whole thing. Oh, we're making a relationship with North Korea and. Well, part of me was thinking, if you look at the whole kind of like it's like this geopolitical high school, you know, we're fighting, Russia's BFS with China, but then North Korea's kind of like over in their region. They're kind of like friends with them, and then they're over here saying, you gotta like, why don't you do this to Trump to kind of like mess things up with him? And why don't you go fire a rocket? Because if you think the last time when they pulled away from the talks, again, North Korea is probably obviously being used as a proxy, like in this like war between China and America and the tariffs and the economy. So what was the last time there was some kind of hiccup with that? What did they tell? What happened? Was that when they just stopped the talks? But part of it also was I think because Pompeo and Bolton were like, well, you just gotta get rid of all your nukes. And it's like, you see what happened to that Gaddafi guy, y'all? And they were like, oh, yeah, about that guy. We're gonna keep our nuclear weapons. Yeah, so yeah, it'll be just interesting to see how that kind of shakes out. And then, Trump raises the tariffs or says they're going to be raised soon. North Korea, do your thing. Go shoot another rocket off. Because you can say, we got them to stop shooting missiles. They haven't shot any rockets anywhere. We're doing more than everybody else did. It's my lame ass, lazy Trump impression. It's not good. It's no bueno. But anyway, I guess last call for the stream tonight. So I am going to say thank you all for like coming and chatting with me tonight. This was awesome. It was good to see such a mix of familiar faces. I mean, everyone's a familiar face, but it was cool to see people from different areas, different places. People I've engaged with directly in my streaming places and others. So Chris, John, Cheese Pizza, thanks for hanging to the end. And we also had Ann and Chaz here as well. That was awesome too. And thank you, ladies, for showing up as well. And yeah, so I want to call it here. Yeah, you're more than welcome. Seriously, thank you. Like it's always good interacting with you, Chris. And hopefully this won't be the last time. Please, y'all come by and chat as always, and that goes to all of you. So seriously, especially because I know it's been such a while, and then like especially like with John, I've got to interact with other people's streams too. So it's kind of fun having it back here on I guess my own particular little home front. And yeah, again, so especially on the next one or any of them, I'll start throwing it out like, hey, if anybody wants to come on, I think I don't know. I think maybe like the next one, I think I really kind of end up being me doing my thing, and maybe I'll just start doing. Maybe once I get like a few more videos up, a few streams up, and just some targeted subjects. It'd be nice to like just maybe pick a day or intermittently just do like an open hangout stream and just have a link, throw it out, and be like, hey, let's let's talk and get at it. All right, so I'm going to say farewell to everyone and thank you again. I think I may have a job, but I don't know. And I don't know. And it's Mother's Day weekend, and then people take the airport Saturday, and all this other weird stuff for the next few days. I don't know when. But hoping maybe tomorrow there'll be a window of time that I'll just come back tomorrow. If I can just make this an everyday thing and just get this nice momentum going, that'll be the best. So look for me very soon. I'll probably just make the alert soon, and then hopefully within a week of just some regularity. I would definitely like to do more, but just hey, come chat. Hey, let's talk and kick it. So anyway, I'm doing the thing I usually do. Yeah, bye guys. My long goodbyes. Gotta get rid of those. So anyway, no more long goodbyes, god damn it. I'll see y'all soon enough, and thanks again so much. It's great to see some familiar faces, and thanks for coming by and showing me some love and doing this little mini deep dive. So anyway, cheers, and enjoy the rest of your night/early morning, and I'll be back. Take care, y'all.